Live debate coverage is brought to you by the Regina and District Chamber of Commerce, the Saskatchewan Realtors Association, the Regina and Region Home Builders Association, Regina Downtown, and the Regina Warehouse District.
Good evening and welcome to Decision 2020. Your province, your vote. On behalf of the Association of Saskatchewan Realtors, the Regina and Region Home Builders, Access Communications, Regina Downtown, Regina's Warehouse District, and the Regina and District Chamber of Commerce, I want to welcome you to tonight's debate on infrastructure. I would now like to introduce you to the candidates. From the NDP, Mr. Trent Witherspoon. Trent, thank you so much for coming. From the Buffalo Party, Mr. Wade Sierra. Thank you so much for coming. From the Liberal Party, Bruno Chahout. Thank you for coming. From the Saskatchewan Party, Gordon Wyatt. Thank you so much for coming. And from the Green Party, Michael Wright. Thank you so much for coming. Just go over some of the rules. In the format for tonight's debate, each candidate will be given 2 minutes for opening comments and 2 minutes for closing comments. Each candidate will be given equal opportunity to answer the questions. They'll be given 1 minute to do so. In addition, each candidate will be given the opportunity to ask any other candidate a question of their choosing within 20 seconds. Not 20 minutes, but 20 seconds. And the candidate asked will have 45 seconds to answer the question. For transparency purposes, we did draws for just about everything. We did a draw for the podium position. We did a draw for the opening comments. The closing comments will be the reverse. We did a draw for the question order, and we did a draw for who gets to ask which question of another candidate. So we've got everything sort of set up and ready to go. So we will move right ahead now to opening comments, if I can find my sheet, sorry. And so we'll go to opening comments right now, and we'll start with you, Mr. Chahout.
Thank you, John. Ladies and gentlemen, mesdames et messieurs, bonsoir, good evening. My name is Bruno Chahout. I'm the bilingual candidate for our Regina Lakeview constituency, as well as a representative for the Liberal Party of Saskatchewan. As a preamble for tonight's discussion, I would like to make the following statement. Because we don't see injustice from purposely erased history. The Saskatchewan Liberal Party is committed to move forward in partnership with Indigenous nations, namely to the 2, 4, 5, 6, 8, 10 and Métis Nation, in the spirit of reconciliation and collaboration under the Saskatchewan motto for many people's strengths, to permanently erect, raise and display the flags of the 7 treaty nations on individual 7 poles of equal heights and stature to the Saskatchewan flag on top of the Saskatchewan Legislative Building. Furthermore, and to give meaning to our Treaty 4 acknowledgement for Regina and our constituency of Regina Lakeview, I would like to begin by acknowledging that our constituency of Regina Lakeview is on the traditional lands referred as Treaty 4 territory, the original lands of the Cree, Ojibwe, Saulteaux, Dakota, Lakota, Nakota, and the homelands of the Métis nations. We respect and honor the treaties that were made in all territories. We acknowledge the harms and mistakes that were made in the past, and we are committed to move forward in partnership with Indigenous nations in a spirit of reconciliation and collaboration. Thank you. Merci. Marcy. Mitwek.
Thank you very much. Mr. Witherspoon.
Thank you, John. Thank you to you in the Chamber, to the home builders, to the Warehouse District, Business Improvement District, and downtown as well for holding this important conversation at this important time. It's a pleasure to be here on Treaty 4 territory in the homeland of the Métis at this historic time within our province and on the a few days out from this very important election. Certainly I want to recognize and thank all Saskatchewan people, local businesses, organizations for stepping up during this historic challenge as we face COVID-19. The sacrifice is recognized and we need to do all we can to protect lives and importantly protect livelihoods and work towards securing an economic recovery that works for people and that puts them to work. You know, for us, this is an important election, of course, to stop the cuts to health and education from the Sask Party, to protect our Crown corporations from the sell-offs of the Sask Party, to invest in mental health and addiction services, to save lives across Saskatchewan, and to make life more affordable. But we need to get our economy back on its feet in a way that works for people. An important part of that is the infrastructure discussion here tonight. Under the Sask Party, we realize that infrastructure projects paid for with public dollars, taxpayers' dollars, have been outsourced time and time again, shutting out Saskatchewan workers and companies, and that they've also been plagued in scandal. With massive overruns, we think of the Regina Bypass project, or the GTH, and the corruption that's occurred, and a government that's been unwilling to put daylight on these deals that have wasted millions of dollars of Saskatchewan people's dollars. We're committed to building Saskatchewan with Saskatchewan people and workers. Our commitment as well is to get the PST off of construction labor, to allow those dollars to go further when our municipalities are spending those dollars. It makes no sense to have a tax upon a tax. And we're also committed to increasing the budgets for maintenance for our health and education infrastructure. Right now, the deficit on those fronts are to the tune of billions. I look forward to the conversation. Together, let's build this fine province.
Thank you. Mr. Wyatt.
Thank you, John. Thanks to Access Communications and the Chamber for the opportunity of being here today. Over the course of this campaign, we've had the opportunity as Saskatchewan Party to present our plan for strong recovery and for strong Saskatchewan. The economic recovery from the pandemic is already underway. Businesses have reopened, thousands of people have returned to work, and Saskatchewan now has the lowest unemployment rate in Canada, and we're forecasted to have the lowest debt to GDP in the country. But there's more to do. We need to continue to support the recovery while working to make life more affordable for Saskatchewan people, and a key part of that will be infrastructure. For homeowners, a re-elected Saskatchewan Party government will introduce a new Saskatchewan home renovation tax credit. This new tax credit will create jobs in the province's construction industry and provide financial relief to families, while also helping to drive Saskatchewan's economic recovery. This program will save Saskatchewan homeowners $124 million, money back in your pockets. That's based on nearly $1.2 billion in home renovation activity. That's a lot of building, and it's a lot of spending, and there's a lot of hiring right here in this province. But that's just one way we're driving a strong recovery and building a strong Saskatchewan. The new home renovation tax credit will complement other measures intended to boost the economy and the economic activity in Saskatchewan. In the last provincial budget, we cut PST on new home construction. We've introduced a 2-year, $7.5 billion capital program to support recovery. And across Saskatchewan, we're investing in schools, hospitals, highways, long-term care facilities, utility services, and municipal infrastructure. That means $7.5 billion in economic activity and job creation in every part of this province. And it will be done by Saskatchewan workers on the job site. In fact, in the Saskatchewan Party, we introduced the community benefits into our tendering process to help benefit that. That means your bid gets scored based on local labor. It's a move our industry associations have applauded, and it's a move that's right for the people of Saskatchewan. It will help drive our economic recovery, and that's important, is an important part for a strong Saskatchewan and a strong recovery. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Sierra.
Hello, I'm Mr. Sierra with Buffalo Party of Saskatchewan. Buffalo Party believes in having a really strong economy. And to have a strong economy, you need the infrastructure to back that. We need to get your goods to market, whether it's within Saskatchewan or even to Tidewater. We need to work for a better Saskatchewan. Other parties in the legislature for years have invested money, but we have seen very little infrastructure that has actually produced a better Saskatchewan. We have highways in this province that are still not been built. We have highways in this province that have been torn apart and left behind and not finished. We have been taken out of our railroads that have provided access that needed to be there for goods to market. We have the carbon capture system down in Estevan, and yet we're closing that down. That's been invested into. We need to increase that ability down there. SNC Lavalin keeps getting contracts for our highway, which we're shipping that out, and for other infrastructure projects within our province. And yet, our candidate from the Sask Party was the one who said we won't stop working with them. but yet they are not a provincial party or provincial organization. As the NDP candidate brought forward about PTS on municipal projects, that was brought out by the Buffalo Party first, but when it's a good idea, why not piggyback off of it? We need to stop taxing lower forms of government within this province and increase their ability to provide better accesses for this province and for the people of this province of Saskatchewan. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Wright.
Thank you, John. My name's Michael Wright. I'm the candidate in Regina Lakeview for the Saskatchewan Green Party. And with all respect to Bruno, je suis l'autre candidat bilingue en notre circonscription. And I'd like to say that this is an infrastructure debate. I have a bit of experience with that. I was an engineer with the Ministry of Highways. I have an environmental systems engineering degree from the U of R. I studied civil engineering. I was involved in paving roads. When the overpass at Belle Plaine had a landslide, I was out there summer making sure that traffic was safe for everybody to get across. Now I'm a teacher with Regina Public Schools, so I know a little bit about education too. So I'd like to start out by talking about our plan for education. We need reconciliation in this province. All the money in the world isn't going to heal our pain and our hurt if we don't work towards making things better. We're talking about making education available to all people in Saskatchewan languages so that you could take your first language education in the treaty language of your choice. This could be Cree or Dene, Michif, any of the languages of our province. This will require the construction of new schools, which is what we need. Right now we have a model where we're building these multi-use schools in the city that are warehousing students. If you add the public and Catholic students together at some of the bigger schools, you have over 1,000 kids, elementary school kids. You have elementary schools now that are bigger than high schools. That's not what we should be about as a province. We should be educating each other as a community. If we want to talk about infrastructure with highways, we have been spending billions of dollars on a bypass that is not projected to reach its usage for another 20 years. This is not a good usage of our money. For the amount of money that they spend on a single overpass, that could have funded our Saskatchewan Transportation Company for a year or years. So I think we have a government that has failed to recognize that people, not everybody is able to drive, and that our society, a modern society, requires a bus company. And if you leave it to the free market, as they did, you'll have 10 bus companies popping up, each getting 10% of the market share and then failing. So I think that's just a complete abject policy failure on the government. They didn't consider that there's people that need to take the bus and need to get places. So our policy is about building schools for reconciliation and about having infrastructure money that's spent where it's really needed.
Thank you very much. Way over time, and we'll go to the first question. Bruno, the first question will be for you, and the question will be, what would you do to improve our transportation infrastructure?
You mean carrying people from one place to the other, I would assume. Having a bus service in Regina and Saskatoon between Regina and Moose Jaw and Swift Current or anywhere around the province. But the thing is, what type of money do we have to do so? If we cut the services because we don't consider it as essential, it becomes a real issue with people who have difficulties moving around. So what we would do basically is to recreate a phenomenon which existed in the past. Not because it was the 20th century, but it's just because we're still in the 21st century and we want something which facilitates the movement among people from one part of Saskatchewan to the other part of Saskatchewan. Could we live in Uranium City, or could we live in Panglam, Saskatchewan in the south or in the north, or from Lloydminster to almost to the frontier of the Pas? But it's just a question of we don't have the facilities to do so. We don't have a rail service because it would be too expensive, and therefore we need a bus service which is totally efficient and automatically profitable. Thank you, John.
Thank you. Mr. Wright.
Okay. Well, our party is different in that we are not funded by the road building companies, and we are not funded by the consulting engineering companies. If you look at the donations that are received by the Saskatchewan Party and the New Democratic Party, they're both funded by the Saskatchewan Heavy Construction Association, which is the major road building lobby in this province. For that reason, we are spending hundreds of millions of dollars more on roads than we are collecting in fuel tax. for example. We are spending hundreds of millions of dollars on roads that we don't need. So the Green Party is proposing full cost environmental, full cost usage accounting of all infrastructure spending so that we're not effectively subsidizing fossil climate change, essentially, as a government, and that we would be investing in things that we really need, which is probably a transit network in the province for the 10 to 15% of the people that are not able to drive. This is in opposition, for example, to the NDP party to just give a blanket refund to people that are car drivers, which is discrimination against people based on ability. What we're saying is that we need to have infrastructure that's universally accessible to everybody, and it should be paid for on both a progressive basis, but also on a way that contains environmental damage. That's essentially the Green Party.
Thank you.
policy.
Mr. Sierra.
Buffalo Party believes that as an official opposition needs to be more effective for Saskatchewan. We need to make sure the money is being invested into Saskatchewan, into its infrastructure system, should be used properly. Right now, we have seen this year that we invested a lot of money from Delisle to Harris to raise that side of highway, but that highway was just done 6 years ago. Yet we have Highway 15 east of Kenniston that's been ripped up almost that same time ago, 6 years. And yet nothing's been done. You can't even take a car down there, and that's supposed to be a highway to link east and west Saskatchewan. We have Unger West, which is being rebuilt, but only at 40 millimeters. That's not good enough for secondary weights. We cannot provide proper access across this province. We have, in northern Saskatchewan, we cannot even provide proper access for our logging companies. They get restricted to secondary weights. We have to do better with the money invested in Saskatchewan. And as an official opposition, we'll create a fair deal for Saskatchewan to make sure your money is put into proper places.
Thank you. Mr. Witherspoon.
This is a really important question, and with the People's Trust as the next government, the NDP are ready to rebuild the Saskatchewan Transportation Company and to make sure we reconnect Saskatchewan. Of course, this is vital to connecting our province, and it's a lifeline for so many people and communities. As opposed to what we've seen with the Sask Party when it comes to highways projects and the mismanagement and the projects that have been plagued in scandal and that have been outsourced time and time again to companies far outside Saskatchewan, far outside of Canada, we would build Saskatchewan roads and other projects like schools and hospitals with Saskatchewan workers and companies. We'd maximize the return on our hard-earned public dollars on this front and the economic return for Saskatchewan people, and we derive significantly better value out of those projects that have been rightly described by other participants as incredibly mismanaged and wasteful by the Sask Party. More than that, though, we'd support short-line rail and lean in to this duopoly to make sure our rail system is performing for Saskatchewan people.
Thank you. Mr. Wine.
Thanks very much, John. This is a very important topic for the people of Saskatchewan. Since we've had the privilege of forming government, we've had record investments in our highway and transportation system all across this province. Just recently, with our $7.5 billion investment that we're going to be making in infrastructure over the next 2 years, $377 million of it will be dedicated to transportation infrastructure. That includes $357 million for more than 1,000 kilometers of improvements to our highway system, 24 new sets of passing lanes. This is about creating a transportation network that creates a safe transportation system for the people of Saskatchewan, and it creates opportunities for increased trade, not just within the province, but trade with the United States, with trade with our neighboring provinces. So this province is blessed with a good infrastructure system, but we need to continue to invest in it. And as I've said, since we've had the privilege of forming government, record investments on infrastructure after having received a significant transportation deficit from the former government. So we're going to continue to make the important investments in the transportation infrastructure that we need to make.
Thank you very much. We'll go to the next question. We'll start with you, Mr. Wyatt. The question is, as the energy sector is vital to Saskatchewan, do you support increased traditional energy investments within the province?
Well, this is another very important question, John. Certainly, our economy is dependent on our resource sector. We continue to do the work that we need to do to work with our partners in industry to make sure that we continue to grow our economy. But certainly there are investments that we need to make when it comes to energy self-sufficiency, moving forward with a renewable platform, having regard to the fact that at the end of the day, we have a resource-based economy, and we need to continue to invest, continue to support our resource-based economy. After all, it's the economy that supports all the things that we need to do in this province, John. It's the currency by which we do everything. And so in order to ensure that we continue to grow our economy, certainly we need to continue to support those partners, those industries that are in our resource sector, and we'll continue to do that as a government.
Thank you. Mr. Witherspoon.
The resource sector is incredibly important to Saskatchewan, and the traditional energy sector, oil and gas, is very important to this province. Of course, it's faced serious headwinds and significant hardship, and that's been a hard reality for so many of those businesses and so many of the workers that have been displaced from work that they were very proud of. We have always stood with that industry and certainly will, and we support pipeline capacity and new pipelines to Tidewater, recognizing that right now we take a serious discount on the price of our oil. But we need to be more than that. We need to make sure we're taking the PST off of construction labor to fire up construction and harness the power of renewable power in Saskatchewan to build new power generation that's affordable, that's sustainable, that brings down the bills for Saskatchewan homeowners and businesses and farms. Things like the rooftop solar program, which was killed by the Sask party, was a good program that needs to be built upon. Energy efficiency retrofits, closed loop geothermal, these are all tremendous opportunities.
Thank you, Mr. Wright.
Thank you very much, John. We need to be investing in the future economy. We remember the day during the beginning of the pandemic when the oil price crashed and you had to pay money to get rid of oil. Now, Tesla's come out with a $25,000 car. We have to be preparing for the economy of the future. Now, our campaign, unlike the other, has not received money from the fertilizer companies, has not received money from the potash companies, has not received money from the refineries, so I don't feel the need to speak on their behalf. Instead, I'd like to speak on behalf of people that want our energy to be made from the wind and from the sun. I would like to point out that in Germany, a nation that's only half the physical size of Saskatchewan, they produce an order of magnitude more wind energy than we produce in total energy. We've been told that we can't have baseload energy that's made by dispatchable and intermittent power sources, but if we had the right investment in the distribution and transmission network and the voltage network, we could have this. I suggest to the government read some of these technical documents that they've done in more progressive nations.
Thank you. Mr. Cyr.
Increased investment on resources is part of our platform. We need to see more smaller upgraders and refineries in Saskatchewan to increase our investment in our oil and gas industry. Unfortunately, we have seen a decline in investment in Saskatchewan by the provincial governing party. They're using Ottawa's money to shut down our oil industry. They sided with the federal Liberal Party on shutting down our coal industry. We invested billions of dollars into carbon capture, and yet we're just going to shut it down like it was nothing. Unlike other platforms out here that are talking about wind and solar, wind can only produce 30% of the power it's actually rated to produce. It's unattainable to produce proper wind power. Oil and gas is the only industry we have at this moment in time that can do it. Our nations and our hospital and our services we need run 24 hours a day, and we need our energy to run 24 hours a day. Solar can't run 24 hours a day. Even the battery systems cannot handle the system that we need in this province. We need to invest more in oil and gas and natural resources.
Thank you. Bruno.
Do you mind giving me the question again, because I've got a slightly different type of answer.
Oh, sure. Hold on half a second. The energy sector is vital to Saskatchewan. Do you support increased traditional energy investments within the province?
Obviously, everybody does like what we do have in Saskatchewan. But I'm going to diverse slightly on this question, because the energy that we do have currently are all the youth that 4 years ago were 14 and today are 18 years old, who are dreaming of having a province which is clear of pollution, which is based on solar panels, which is based on maybe going to the restaurant and have a cooked meal on a gas stove. But they want to get rid, basically, on the long term, of the oil industry. Not that it has to be done right away, but there's an issue there, which is basically the reason why maybe so few of us, as far as youth, even though I'm over the age of youth now, are considering really seriously, why do we have to always go with the traditional 19th century philosophy of having coal and oil and gas to promote our philosophy?
Thank you very much. The next question, we will start with you, Mr. Sira. The Regina bypass has been a hot topic for a while now. What's your perspective on the bypass?
Buffalo Party's stance on the bypass is the investment that has been put in place was dirty. It's corrupt. We've seen the parties that were brought in to do so, and the money and the land sold over and over again, and yet no justice for the people of Saskatchewan to actually see what was going on. We want to trust the Saskatchewan Party to continue on in proper infrastructure projects without an official opposition holding to an account saying this has to stop right now. Your own party members are the ones who are profiting off of this, but yet not the people of Saskatchewan. If Buffalo Party is elected as an official opposition, we will demand an inquiry, a judicial inquiry, not internal house, but external inquiry, to make sure that the people of Saskatchewan were not taken advantage of by crooked deals from crooked governments.
Thank you, Mr. Wright.
Okay, we have a bypass that costs $2 billion, has something like 5,000 vehicles a day. I can tell you that you don't need interchanges. You don't need interchanges 500 meters apart for 5,000 vehicles a day. You can handle that with a normal at-grade intersection. So this type of money, we have to question, why did we spend like $2 billion, which is now 10% of our provincial debt? I don't know. The provincial debt keeps going up, so I guess that number as a percentage might keep going down. But it's kind of shocking. I know that Mr. Wyant at one point campaigned on maybe getting to the bottom of some of the dirty dealings with what's going on with the bypass, what's going on with the global transportation hub. I know that none of that happened. It makes me very sad that nuns were swindled out of their money so that some members of the Saskatchewan Party cabinet could benefit. That's something that we've never found out the truth about, and we really should.
Thank you, Bruno.
Thank you. Bypass. Now, if you remember, maybe some of you, I mean, I'm that old. I mean, I'm a senior, and maybe I remember why the GTA was created as a hub to transport merchandise and food from one part of Canada to the other parts and from Canada to the US. Now it so happened, how many people died on the highway because there were no bypass? And that's the main issue. The main issue, the cost is one thing, but what is the cost of a life? How many people cried out? How many families cried out? How many brothers, sisters, dad and mom cried out because their son, daughters, dad and mom, uncle died on these particular highways because there were no bypass? The thing is, the question is not the bypass. The bypass is one thing. The bypass is good for the economy because it carries the load of food and merchandise around the world, which is the world of Saskatchewan. But the thing is also the bypass is a question of labor. Labor was totally shut down by outside parties, and that's the reason why.
Thank you. Mr. Wyatt.
Well, I'm going to first start, John, by saying I resent the implication that there was cabinet ministers that were involved in illegal activity. So I'm going to start with that. But I'll tell you this, the bypass, when it was built because of the safety challenges on the highway, especially around Highway 1 East. It was built to ensure that there was more economic development around the city of Regina. That bypass saved the taxpayers of this province $380 million, and Mr. Weatherspoon knows the fact that that was all verified by Ernst & Young in a value for money report that's available online to the people of Saskatchewan. This project was built by Saskatchewan people. Over 70% of the work that was done on that bypass was done by residents of Saskatchewan, by workers in Saskatchewan, and you only have to ask the people who work at Broda Construction or who work for Graham Construction about all the work that was done on that bypass. They deposited their checks into bank accounts and credit unions across this province. So the fact of the matter is that when we built the bypass, we built it based on the need of the community, the need to increase safety. Mr. Weatherspoon stood in this place 28 times, or 82 times, to demand more safety on Dewdney, and we provided that to them.
Thank you. Mr. Weatherspoon.
Well, I think that answer from the Sask Party tells you a lot about the Sask Party today. And anyone in Saskatchewan knows just how wrong and how managed and how off the rails this project has been. The corruption and the crooked deals and the wasted money involved in the GTH and the bypass should be tolerated by no one. That very member that's here tonight with the Sask Party once said they supported an inquiry into this matter. And as the Saskatchewan NDP and as potentially the next government in Saskatchewan, that's exactly what will make happen, a judicial inquiry into the GTH and the bypass. For the member from the Sask Party to assert as well that somehow these jobs were kept local is ludicrous. This project ripped off nuns, as has been identified, ripped off taxpayers of their hard-earned dollars, and then sent the biggest overrun on a project in Saskatchewan's history in a contract to a company from France, shutting out Saskatchewan companies and workers, $2 billion and counting.
Thank you. The next question will start with you, Mr. Weatherspoon. The question is, housing is important to everyone. What is your party's approach to the supply, affordability and attainability of housing?
This is a really important question. And I'll touch it in a couple different ways. Our housing industry has really been impacted in the last few years here by a government that's done a couple things. They've made life incredibly harder for Saskatchewan people, jacking up the cost of living on front after front, leaving house after house, $200, actually 50% of households, $200 away from being insolvent at the end of each and every month. They've brought forward the biggest tax hike in Saskatchewan history with the PST, the imposition of the PST, which has accounted to about $1,000 more for each and every family in just a 4-year period of time. And they've imposed the PST onto construction labor, which has jacked up the cost of construction and has shut down projects and forced so many out of their jobs, which is why we're committed to getting that off. Importantly, we're committed to making life more affordable in Saskatchewan. We're a real partner to act around poverty and homelessness and housing first. We have the solutions, we have the tools, we need to get it done for Saskatchewan people.
Thank you. Bruno.
Thank you. I'm going to take a different angle on this one because obviously to build is key, but to build properly is even better. And I'm not going to go to the Jim Morrison Hospital where somebody voluntarily gave $50 million, and what did we get out of it? It's a leaky roof, and the hospital is not still open, which means when we say, or when they say Saskatchewan is open for business, or maybe we should go into the business of submarines, but you know what, I'm not there. But it so happened that what we're looking at, when the government says we're going to give you $1,000 to fix your home. Now, in Saskatchewan, you have approximately 432,000 houses. At $1,000, that's $432 million that they have to give. If we're looking at small businesses, that's 150,000 small businesses that we're looking at $150 million again on this one. So we're looking close to $600 million just with the $1,000. Now, if we're looking at really building or fixing the economy and fixing this particular building situation, we have, and I know I'm going to finish really soon, but we have to also consider that the filtration system, the air system that circulates into your home, basically is totally deficient. And when they give you $600, which is 1/10 of whatever a changing system will go, that's
Sorry, time's up, Bruno.
Thank you. Thanks.
Mr. Wyatt.
Well, thanks very much, John. You know, John, housing starts in this province year over year up over 500%. Certainly, we had to make some difficult decisions back in 2007 to shift our reliance from natural resources, and PST was one of them. We've recently just removed the PST on construction equipment in the housing sector. We did that in this last year's estimates. We're providing stimulation in that industry through the home renovation tax credit and the removal of the small business tax. Now, the one thing that Mr. Weatherspoon and his party haven't explained is how they're going to replace that $1.8 billion if they remove the PST on construction. And that's something they haven't explained how they're going to do it. They haven't costed it in their budget. So ultimately that's going to lead to an increase in the deficit. It's going to increase the taxes of the people of this province. So what we need to continue to do is continue to work with our industry, to make sure that we're providing the right support for that industry.
Thank you. Mr. Wright.
Thank you, John. We need to make sure that housing is affordable for everybody. So we need to make sure that the interests that would have housing prices be inflated not be involved in making our political decisions. The Saskatchewan Party receives money from realtor associations. So does the NDP. These are parties that will be the spokespersons for interests that want to inflate your housing prices. They also receive money from the banks. They both receive money from CIBC and TD Bank. They don't have an interest in your housing prices going down or staying flat or housing being affordable for you. Not at all. So I would suggest go vote for the Green Party. We have a reasonable plan, for example, on rent control as a stopgap that we will just adopt what is similar to Manitoba, in that we'll just have inflationary controls that, you know, very reasonable. There's no issue in Manitoba with that. And then we'll be investing in public housing. We need to have places for people to live. We can't be just outsourcing to private landlords housing for people that don't have their own homes. We need to have dignity for people that are renters. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Sierra.
Buffalo Party believes that as an official opposition, an effective official opposition, we need to make sure that people of Saskatchewan can afford their homes. By affording your homes is by reducing the taxes on your homes. The Sask Party is the one who brought in the taxes, increased the prices on your homes. They did that because they wanted to cover up poor management within their budgets in the past. Now they're going to give you a tax credit so you can retrofit your house, but that's on the backs of everyone else already. Reduce the tax system on people so they can invest in their own houses already by lowering income tax. We can also work with, why are we paying premium price for third grade lumber? Yet the lumber that's going to other countries from Canada is not being brought into this province fairly. Why we keep paying high prices for these lumbers? And with the Saskatchewan Party keeps saying we're going to reduce for 1 year your cost of heating your house. Why are we using our crown corporations as another tax filler? Reduce the cost to start with.
Thank you. We'll go to the next question. Mr. Wright, we'll start with you. And the question is, do we need more photo radar on Saskatchewan highways and or passing lanes?
Do we need more photo radar? Okay, I had not anticipated that question. Okay, I'd say that one thing that is concerning with our highway is that we've upped the speed limits to dangerous levels. I remember reading a memo that one of our engineers had written to the government at the time, I believe the Saskatchewan Party was in, recommending that we should not increase our speed limits to 110 kilometers per hour because basically people would die. And so, I mean, this has been the case, I suppose, at the marginal level. Sure, we're getting our goods to market faster, but, I mean, is this the type of society that we want to live in where speed is everything, and we also know fuel efficiency is worse at higher speeds? I mean, whether we should be using more photo radar, you know, I've had to pay, like, an accidental ticket once and again. So, you know, I mean, we're not immune to, like, obeying the law. So, you know, if there's danger out there, I don't see that there should be any problem in asking people to behave safely. But we have to ask, has a society been designed in such a way that we can drive safely without the overarching arm of government controlling us in a punitive way?
Thank you. Mr. Sierra.
Buffalo Party believes that right in our platform it states that we want to have our own provincial police force. We have seen that the RCMP, not the officers themselves within this province, but the oversight from Ottawa has been ineffective, and we need more of an effective police force within Saskatchewan. We need to work with our municipal police forces and our provincial police force and the highway patrol for more effective officers. And if they agree that we need to invest in photo radars on the highways, then that's something that as an opposition party, we will work with whomever is the governing party of this province to make sure that the people of this province are safe and that we're working with our municipal partners and the police forces within this province to provide effective service to curb any rural crimes or rural speed limits or anything else that is deterring this province.
Thank you. Mr. Witherspoon.
Interesting question, wasn't anticipating it. Certainly, I guess I wouldn't be pushing for more photo radar. What I think we need to be focusing on, though, is drunk driving in this province, a serious problem that hasn't properly been enforced or responded to by the current government. It's something that takes many lives all across this province. The same with distracted driving. The importance of us making sure we have enforcement and actions that address distracted driving to make sure we have safe roads is something that's really important. What's interesting, though, is, I mean, we're talking about photo radar, but it reminds me again of the Sask Party on this front. They outsource anything they have a chance to from Saskatchewan, including photo radar. When they brought it out, they went with an out-of-province company to bring in this technology, bypassing Saskatchewan companies and people on this front, just like they did with, of all things, the fishing and big game draw system in this province, down to an American outfit. Those are maybe smaller dollar items, but they certainly are very much in line with what they've done with the bypass and with schools and with hospitals, shutting out Saskatchewan companies and workers.
Thank you. Bruno.
Thank you. It's an interesting question, not because it's just photo radar, but it's also I'm European and I'm French and I'm Canadian, and they reduced the speed from 140 to 130 on basically European highways, at least in France. And that was about, I think if I remember, about 80,000 fewer deaths for a year. It's not because in Saskatchewan we die a lot on highways, but the same as when you wear a mask. You protect somebody. If you lower your speed, you protect somebody. And that is, I think, the main issue. Do we need more photo radars in Saskatchewan? Maybe in key places, maybe not. The thing is, are we responsible drivers? And that is the main question. We cannot have RCMPs following us on a regular basis, or we do have to buy some radars on our own cars to make sure that nobody's there. But that's the main issue. So if it saves lives, I would say yes.
Thank you. Mr. Wyatt.
Well, thanks, John. Just to correct the record for my friend, Mr. Witherspoon, as a result of the very good work that SGI has done and Minister Hargrave and his responsibility as the Minister for SGI, impaired driving is way down in this province. And that has to do with a lot of the very, very good work that's being done, not just by the government, but in relation to the work that we're doing with our municipalities. So creating a safe environment for drivers to be on the roads, especially in areas where it's very difficult and where there are safety concerns. We see photo radar in school zones, for instance, and the proceeds from part of the proceeds from those radar goes to public safety, goes to traffic safety initiatives around the province. So to the extent that we need to kind of increase photo radar in those areas where it's important from a safety perspective, that's fine. But I think that we need to continue to work with our municipalities to ensure that what we're doing from a traffic safety perspective is effective on the streets. And as I mentioned before, we've made significant investments in highways over the last number of years since we've had the privilege of forming government, $377 million just recently. We need to continue to make those investments to make sure that our roads are safe.
Thank you very much. We're going to go to the candidate-to-candidate question round. And so we're going to start with you, Mr. Wyatt. 20 seconds to ask your question. And whoever he asks will have 45 seconds to answer the question.
Well, I'd like to ask you a question of Mr. Witherspoon, if that's all right. Your party platform, Trent, has included $4 billion in capital spending, which you haven't accounted for. You claim that you're going to use our current capital plan, and that's where you're going to find the funds to do that program. Our plan already allocates for projects around the province, including 7 schools, new schools, hospitals, and several hundred kilometers of highways. So how are you going to afford to fill your plan with our budget, given the fact that you're going to have to cut off a lot of capital projects that we've already announced?
You know, what's disappointing here tonight is that it's clear the minister maybe brought in a briefing note and maybe read it incorrectly, because the numbers are nonsense that's been brought forward. And what he knows, and I know the minister knows this full well, he's a good person. He knows that our plan has been fully costed, and I also know he knows the room within the Saskatchewan Builds budget and the currently unallocated capital plans of this government. The thing that's going to be a stark difference, though, between that government, the Sask Party, and the NDP government is we're going to get value for those dollars. We're going to put Saskatchewan people to work, Saskatchewan companies to work, building Saskatchewan, maximizing that return and getting this economy back on its feet, including when municipalities are spending those dollars. We won't be hitting them with the PST and taxing them twice.
Thank you. Mr. Witherspoon, you have the next question.
My question is to Minister Wyant, who presided over the GTH scandal. It's something that's corrupt to no end, and something that he once said when he was running to be the Premier a couple years ago, that he was supportive of putting a bright light on. Why has he backed away from that promise, and will he now support the commitment of the NDP to a full judicial inquiry of the GTH?
Well, thanks very much for the question. You know that we've had this conversation in the House on many occasions. The Conflict of Interest Commissioner had said there was no conflict of interest with respect to that project. The auditor had said that there was a clean bill of health. So from our perspective, from the matter in terms of the audit, in terms of the conflict of interest, there's no need to have a public inquiry. We have gone through the process with the auditor. We've gone through the process with the Conflict of Interest Commissioner, who has given a bill of health on this. So that's my answer.
Thank you very much. We'll go to you, Mr. Sierra.
I guess our question has to be, Crown Corporation, SaskPower, is suing SNC Lavalin for failure to provide proper services with construction to the carbon capture system. Yet Minister Wyant himself sided with his friends down east and brought SNC Lavalin in and continues to say that we're going to keep giving contracts to these corrupt companies. Our question is, how much longer should the Saskatchewan people trust in your ability to not work with corrupt companies?
Well, let me answer it this way. We're going to continue to look when we do Crown procurement, when we do procurement through executive government, to make sure that we're getting value for Saskatchewan taxpayers. And that includes ensuring through the course of our procurement, whether that's executive government or through the Crown corporations, that we're benefiting Saskatchewan taxpayers, that we're benefiting Saskatchewan workers and Saskatchewan companies. We will continue to make the appropriate decisions in terms of maximizing tax dollars of Saskatchewan people to make sure that they get the product, to make sure that they get the infrastructure that they deserve with their hard-earned tax dollars.
Sending money down east.
Thank you very much. We'll go to the next question. Mr. Wright.
Thank you. I'd like to ask the question to Mr. Wyant. So the federal government has reformed campaign finance. A person can only give something like $1,700 to a political party federally. We've had the same reform across the provinces. All kinds of decent countries, except those that elect Donald Trump for president, have made these types of reforms. So I guess my question is, why haven't you made these reforms? And is it just a coincidence, I suppose, that all the companies receiving the local business tenders are on the same list of donors to your party?
Well, look, we've had this conversation on a number of occasions. It's not the position of the Saskatchewan Party government that we're looking at the present time to amend any of our campaign finance laws. We know that the New Democrats get donations from many unions across the piece and from many corporations as well. Certainly corporations who retain and who employ people in Saskatchewan certainly should have a voice in terms of where they want to place their capital investments and their investments with respect
is investing in your capital investment?
In their investments with respect to capital, but they also want to have a voice when it comes to ensuring how their employees get a voice within government. And so we'll continue to support the current process with regard to campaign finance laws. There's no intention of changing it.
Thank you. Bruno.
Thank you. It's amazing because there's one bad war friend. He's sitting next to me on my left. Not because he's leftist, but he's just positioned on this particular part of the podium. You mentioned, or the Premier mentioned, that you were receiving, you were going to give $7.5 billion to the economy, which is wonderful. But my question is, and that has been for a long time a bit for me, you receive money from the federal government, which is the Liberal Party of Canada, to do the GTA. You never mentioned it. you going to receive some money as fund from the provincial government and that from the federal government, and that you will never mention it. And also within the 7.5 billion budget, you also have a P3 involvement. That was my question.
Well, the $7.5 billion investment is a provincial investment in infrastructure. We've had $5.5 billion investment in the budget with a $2 billion booster shot. Certainly there are funds available from the federal government under ISIP, and I have responsibility for that as the Minister of Sask Builds, to lever as much federal money as we can with respect to the development and the building out of infrastructure across Saskatchewan. We've had a number of projects that have been approved by the federal government for joint funding with the province and with municipalities. We'll continue to work with the federal government to try to lever as much money as we can through that program. Other conversations with the federal government with respect to what other money is available in terms of ensuring that we continue to provide the infrastructure to the people of Saskatchewan that they deserve.
Thank you very much. We'll go back to the questions. We'll start with you, Mr. Sierra, and the question is, how should the federal government be involved in infrastructure investments for our province?
Buffalo Party believes that we need to be free from Ottawa. Their overreach and oversight into this province needs to end. Continually see over and over again the Saskatchewan Party, or the new Saskatchewan Liberal Party, works hand in hand with Ottawa and the Liberal Party out east. We need to be free from them. We need to control our tax dollars in this province. We need to control more of Saskatchewan's destiny right here. We send that money back to Ottawa. It's the same deal as what Quebec does. They take their tax dollars, they build their projects, and they give a little bit back to Ottawa after tax season's over. We need the same deal here in Saskatchewan as what they have out there. We need a fair deal for Saskatchewan. We need to be free and prosperous. We need to stand as an independent province within Canada.
Thank you, Mr. Wyant.
Well, as I've mentioned before, we continue to work with the federal government on a number of fronts with respect to funding important infrastructure. Over $900 million, which we made available to the province through the ISIP funding, which money we can use to match with provincial funding and municipal funding, First Nations, 4 streams where that money is available. We'll continue to work with the federal government to advance projects forward that take full advantage of the funds that are available from the federal government of that program, and continue to have conversations with the federal government about what other funding programs may be available to fund the important infrastructure that the people of Saskatchewan want. We've seen a number of funding programs over the last number of years. The Strategic Infrastructure Fund, which helped do some work in post-secondary education across Saskatchewan. We need to continue to have the conversations with the federal government to advance to the fullest extent possible and lever to the fullest extent possible the amount of money that's available by the federal government to fund those important infrastructure projects in this province.
Thank you. Bruno.
Thank you. So from a liberal to a liberal government, always been interesting to find out that the last premier who was in my constituency, which was Ralph Goodale, used to bring between $350 million to $500 million a year to Saskatchewan. Basically, the tax base of Saskatchewan doesn't allow us to do all the projects that we want. We want to have money from somewhere else. So when somebody says, you know what, we want to get rid of the government of in Ottawa because we don't need their money. Yes, we do. If we don't get the money from Ottawa, we get the money from somewhere else. So if it's a private enterprise, then our hands are tied. And when we said, oh, but they don't give us enough money, there was at one point in time, 2014, a prime minister that cut the transfer payment from Ottawa to Saskatchewan. That's all. And his name was Stephen Harper. Thank you.
Thank you, merci. Mr. Wright.
Thank you, John. The approach the Green Party would have to working with the federal government would be collaboratively, and that when the federal government is offering money to us, that we would probably gladly accept it. There are a few cases where the federal government was here to offer money. This is the Regina Chamber of Commerce debate, if I'm not incorrect, and the federal government was offering to help build a swimming pool in our city, and then the government kind of didn't want that. I wonder why, I mean, I'm kind of mystified why they wouldn't want something so nice for our community that so many people would benefit from. Sometimes I question if they're kind of out of touch at the cabinet table. Maybe they don't go to public pools like the rest of us, and they don't know that people need these things. I mean, maybe this is why they didn't take the bus money. They just kind of thought, STC, we don't know anybody that takes the bus. Who needs that? We don't need it. So they got rid of it. So we would have taken the bus money, we would take the pool money, we would work collaboratively for projects that Saskatchewan people need, and we wouldn't turn up our nose at things just because we have a weird opposition to normal services that people can access. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Witherspoon.
This is actually a really important question, and it's identifies something that's been identified in the last response. And this is a government, the Sask Party, that puts their partisan interests ahead of the public's interests here in Saskatchewan over the last numbers of years. To turn away federal dollars for things like Maple Leaf Pool in Regina and to rebuild STC in our province, a transportation network, and other dollars as well that would support municipalities is just wrong. And this is why the federal government needs to be there as a partner. We've seen dollars being deployed, but often we barely see those dollars being returned to Saskatchewan people. It seems like the Sask Party is all too willing to sort of pocket those dollars and take the credit whenever possible as well. What we need in things like municipal infrastructure is for the federal government and the provincial government to act in a nimble and quick way to enable those projects. We also see the federal government as an important partner on economic projects and things like high-speed, high-quality internet and connectivity all across our province.
Thank you very much. Bruno, we'll start with you with the next question. And the question, a bit of a strange one, but I just asked the questions, that's all.
Is it in French?
I wish I could say it in French, but I can't. Should Saskatchewan look into having tolls for highways? Why or why not?
You know, I was expecting this question. I don't know if I knew the answer to your question, but I'm aware of tolls on highways. There's one in France which was supposed, there was a toll that they did, and they said, oh, after the highway is built, we're going to remove the toll. That was highway number 13 from Paris to the west coast, Le Havre, and so on. The point is, after 40 years, it's still on. It's a money-making business. It's the same aspect if you take the toll on Highway 401 in Toronto. This is a huge amount of money. And I thought, you know what, the question has not been asked yet. I wonder why. Because I'm pretty sure this is in the idea of the Saskatchewan Party, or even though into the idea of the NDP.
Thank you very much. Reminds me of something called the income tax, which was supposed to be a temporary thing. But anyways, I'm not supposed to talk about stuff like that. No. Mr. Wright, we'll go to you.
Okay, thank you, John. In societies based on an idea of equality, normally services like highways that benefit private users are often charged back to the users themselves, and that for people that do not have the same means, progressively we give them services like the bus. So I mean, you'll find in nations in Europe that people can take the bus at a reasonable cost, and if you want to drive in your private car, then you might have to pay a toll. And for that reason, they don't have busted up highways everywhere, and they have infrastructure that works because they're willing to put the money in that it requires. So I guess I'm in favor of not subsidizing to an overall extent motor vehicle travel, that it should be based on a user cost basis to a greater extent than it does now. I mean, something with the gas tax, the gas tax flows out of Regina. No gas tax money in Regina gets paid on roads in Regina. You know, it's only get paid on the provincial highway network. So there's a big disequilibrium in how our network is funded, and we should look towards fairness.
Mr. Witherspoon.
Well, we certainly should not have any tolls in Saskatchewan, and this is sort of something I worry about with this current Sask Party government. And why we need change in Saskatchewan. All too often they're tying Saskatchewan people up in our hard-earned tax dollars and overrun contracts with out-of-province private companies when we should be ensuring maximum value for our tax dollars and that infrastructure spend. Certainly we need to make sure that we rebuild a transportation system across Saskatchewan, which is why we're committed to rebuilding STC, something that devastated so many and left so many isolated across the province. And we're also committed to cutting costs for Saskatchewan drivers. And the fact is that SGI, an incredible Crown corporation, this government had many meetings trying to sell off, I might mention. We should be utilizing and protecting that Crown to deliver value and affordability. We've brought forward a rebate from the auto fund of $100 immediately, with a cut year after year after year for every person paying on plates of about $85 a year, and that's returning the hard-earned dollars of Saskatchewan people who have been licensing their vehicles back to them.
Thank you. Mr. Cyr.
Thank you. Buffalo Party believes that right now, Mr. Witherspoon, parts of his argument are absolutely correct. Thank you. Corrupt, yeah, sorry. Hey. They are correct. We have a lot of parts there that we agree with, that instead of having corrupt deals with corrupt companies from out east or with corrupt governments from out east, and instead of worrying about out east companies and bad land deals and overpaying on hospitals and schools in this province and putting too much money on highways that have just been rebuilt and we're going to redo it, maybe we should do it right the first time. If we had that money, instead of overpaying on a lot of projects, then we wouldn't have to be having this conversation about tolls on highways. Buffalo Party stands that unless that need has to happen, we don't want to see it happen.
Thank you very much. Sorry about that. Well, the Saskatoon is a locally company that specializes in intelligent transportation, international dynamics. Have installed lots of IT technology on the bypass and other highways around Saskatoon and around Regina. So I think that what we need to do is have a conversation with the trucking industry to see whether or not the industry would be supportive of a toll facility. But I don't think that any government should move forward with any conversations around toll facilities without a full and complete consultation with industry, with those that are going to end up paying for it. I don't support tolls for private industry or for private vehicles, but certainly there's room for a conversation with the trucking industry as to whether or not that's an efficient way of paying for our infrastructure.
Thank you. We will go to the next question. Mr. White, we'll start with you. Should Saskatchewan require emissions testing for vehicles that use Saskatchewan's infrastructure?
Well, that's, I wasn't expecting that question, John. Certainly to ensure that we're protecting the environment, making sure that we're doing what we can as individuals to protect the environment, having vehicles that are on the road that are spewing CO2. It's important that we make sure that the vehicles that are driving on our roads are efficient in terms of reducing and work to reduce our CO2 emissions, work to reduce our carbon footprint. I think there's lots of rules in place with respect to the federal government around emission standards. The federal government has responsibility with respect to vehicle emissions, with respect to how those vehicles are tested and what the emissions levels should be. So I think with the federal government having rules around emissions in place, I'm not sure that the provincial government needs to have their own set of independent rules around that.
Thank you. Mr. Cyr.
Again, this is a little bit off of question, but emissions testing, what we have seen with the DEF system that we put on diesels across Saskatchewan, whether it's on the agricultural fields or on the semi-traffic industry, we see that this is just a type of fertilizer we're pouring in, and it's actually spewing out worse emissions. We've seen this test over again around the world, that it's actually killing off more insects and bees around the world. Emission testing within the province should be worked with any federal entity if we're going to work with Ottawa. But if we need to make sure that we have a fair deal, that we have a say at the table, instead of always relying on what Ottawa has to say to us. Buffalo Party is going to always stand for a free and prosperous Saskatchewan and independent Saskatchewan.
Thank you very much. Mr. Wright.
Thank you, John. I'm kind of saddened that our government has failed to act on this issue. Obviously, we should have emissions testing. I'd point out that under our Canadian Constitution, roads are a provincial responsibility. So for our minister to come out and say, no, we'll do whatever the federal government does, is basically giving up our jurisdiction over this issue. And in any case, if they're choosing to go with the federal rules, I can assure you the federal rules are not very good. That's typically how this government operates. So I would say, no, we have a responsibility to act. There is a constitution to our land that gives us the responsibility to do it in this area. What may work for other provinces may not work for us. I mean, that's something we've heard time and time again from the government. So for them to say that they're not going to act on this particular issue because they're satisfied with the way the federal government does things, I question why they wasted all our time going to court about the carbon tax if they're fine the way the federal government does things with respect to emissions in terms of climate change. So that's my response. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Witherspoon.
Well, I know emissions are managed largely regulated by the federal government, and I would urge a level of caution. Now, I don't know this file real well, but what I do know is Saskatchewan families are facing serious hardship. So many without jobs, so many without a dollar in their pocket at the end of the month. And I know the constituents that I represent and the ones that might have an old vehicle out front that might not have the best emissions, I know they are in a hard spot right now, and there's a lot of stress around their tables here tonight. So I think we have to act in a better way to make sure that Saskatchewan families can keep their head above water. That means decent local jobs. That means a fair minimum wage, not the lowest minimum wage, the worst minimum wage in Canada. And that means other things like, certainly when it's appropriate for us to address this unfair tax as well, it's something we'd like to. But the PST that was slapped on used cars by the SAS party without any consultation, that might tax the sale of a used car many times over. And these are the folks that are working often the hardest with the least, that are trying to get around. We need to address things like that. And of course, we need to rebuild the STC across Saskatchewan.
Thank you. Bruno.
Thank you. It's an interesting question because my answer is, why don't we have cars which are prepared or moved with hydrogen, which also use gas, by the way. So the gas industry not only gives you a steak and that you can cook or barbecue, but also gives you a car moving around, or simply having cars which are powered by electricity produced by the sun, which is basically, I didn't know, but I don't think there's any pollution known yet from the sun, unless basically if you stay there for 24 hours under the sun and you burn yourself out. But that is the thing. So if we're looking at this particular aspect of pollution and making sure that there is a system to prevent or to measure, what's the point? Because on the long term, we will have electric cars and therefore go straight for electric cars. Thank you.
Merci. Next question, we'll start with you, Mr. Wright. And the question is, should fuel tax be increased to provide more funding for infrastructure improvements?
Well, sure, John. I think the real question is, should other funding sources be diverted to infrastructure? So should we continue with this current system of income tax subsidizing infrastructure improvements? Or should sales tax be used to subsidize infrastructure improvements? Or in the case of the city of Regina, should all of our property taxes go to paying for infrastructure improvements, when instead we have a fuel tax that does not pay even for provincial highway spending? So I would suggest that we need to have a rebalancing. We've talked about climate change. We're talking about a world where we're having increasing temperatures year after year. I mean, this is the context that we're living in. So it's a very small price to pay that we should ask that the users of a system that's literally paved with oil, with bitumen, should at least contribute sufficient money to maintain it.
Thank you. Mr. Witherspoon.
We aren't pushing for a hike to the fuel tax. Again, there's a lot of pressure on Saskatchewan households and small and local businesses across the province, and this would be another hit. What we need to do when we're talking about our infrastructure dollars is stop wasting them, like we see from the SAS party, sending those dollars, those hard-earned tax dollars, out of province, out of country, time and time again, often to folks that may also be donors of that party. I've heard the Green Party talking tonight about something important, that's ending big money in politics. That's something the Saskatchewan NDP are committed to making happen, and that means ending out-of-province corporate donations. Of course, the SAS party receives millions of dollars from out of Saskatchewan. It might explain a bit some of their strange behavior and mismanagement and not getting value for Saskatchewan people. But we believe in ending the donations, both corporate and union donations and making sure that our democracy is funded by Saskatchewan people. And when we build infrastructure, let's do it with Saskatchewan people and Saskatchewan companies.
Mr. Wyatt.
Well, the Saskatchewan Party government doesn't believe in raising taxes, and don't believe in raising the fuel tax. The reality is that what this government is investing in is reducing taxes. We're providing a tax incentive for housing renovations. We're reducing the small business tax to 0% for the next 2 years to encourage economic development. You know, the fact of the matter is that 90% of procurement for executive government and from the Crown corporations is going to Saskatchewan businesses. I hear Mr. Weatherspoon speaking about this all the time. That's the fact. The fact is that 90% of procurement that can be done from Saskatchewan companies is being procured from Saskatchewan companies, both in executive government and both at the Crowns. That's real investment in our economy, and we're going to continue to do that through the work that we're doing. We don't believe in raising taxes, but what we're going to do is continue to invest in the companies and the workers of this province through infrastructure, and we're going to continue to do that work.
Thank you. Bruno.
Thank you. To raise or not to raise taxes? You see, that's a big question. The question is, who deserves to pay more taxes and who deserves to pay less taxes? I'm looking at farmers. They're not rich. They don't make millions of dollars a year. I'm looking at unions, union leaders, workers. They're not rich. They don't make millions of dollars a year. I'm looking at the family who works at Costco. They're not rich. They not make millions of dollars a year. Why should they pay more taxes? And obviously, we need the taxes to make this particular province work. Then why don't we try to find out who doesn't pay taxes and who should be paying taxes? Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Sierra.
Buffalo Party believes that we need to control all the taxes in this province, not just fuel tax, but we need to control our PST and our GST and both forms of income tax. We need to stop the equalization payments. We need to invest that money back in Saskatchewan. We will not raise taxes. Raise taxes means more money out of the people of this province. And the most people in this province are working people, and they're not that far from insolvency. Yet we want to talk about raising taxes, and the Green Party is all for it over here. But we can't afford to do that. The average person can't afford to do that. You can't buy food off the shelves if you raise taxes because the farmers can't afford to pay those taxes. We can't afford this as a province anymore, but we could afford to take control over our destiny and control over the same rights and the fair deal that Quebec has in Canada. We want that here as well. And by having that, we would reduce the amount of equalization to 0 and use that money to better suit Saskatchewan instead of paying for free everything in Quebec. We need that here to invest and help the people of Saskatchewan.
Thank you very much. We'll go to the next question. We'll start with you, Mr. Witherspoon. And the question is, how would you increase investment in municipal infrastructure, both rural and urban?
That's a really good question, and our municipalities have serious infrastructure needs across this province, from our rural communities that are dealing with wastewater, and whether you're a small town or a village or a smaller city or our major centers, the renewal of infrastructure, wastewater, water, transit in our bigger places are critical. So what we need is stable, predictable funding for municipalities across Saskatchewan. We can't blindside them like the Sask Party did a few years ago when they went and ripped up a decades-old contract, the grants in lieu, a contract from the Crown Corporation supporting municipalities and then shorting municipalities to the tune of millions of dollars and forcing those municipalities to either make cuts or increase the property taxes in a significant way. So we need to be there as a stable, predictable partner on operating funding. We need to get there around infrastructure funding as well. And we need to get the PST off construction labor. It makes no sense to have municipalities paying the PST and not allowing their dollar to go as far as they should.
Thank you. Bruno.
Thank you. I put a lot of thought into this particular situation because of what we do in the Liberal Party of Saskatchewan, we propose that basically municipalities, small places in Saskatchewan, basically anywhere where you have people, they should have the opportunity to make money out of producing electricity through solar panels. They don't have the money, but selling it brings them a lot of money, not just tax credit, but they could sell it to the market and therefore being self-sufficient with regard to their own economy and receive also extra money in case they need it. But that is one aspect where they could produce the money that they need. Thank you.
Thank you. Merci.
De rien.
Mr. Sierra.
Municipal infrastructure is a key part to our platform. It's deep to my heart because I used to be a Reeve environment in the province. I also sat on SAMA. I studied taxes, and it isn't fair. That's why our platform first came out with removing PST on municipal infrastructure projects, because it's not fair to tax a tax on another form of government. We need to get out of the way. We need to allow the municipalities to be able to manage themselves more appropriately. And by doing this, they can invest in their municipalities. We built a bridge in our RM, and it cost almost $500,000, but we had to set aside an overage on that budget because the PST was there. We cannot be taxing another form of government anymore. We need to allow municipalities to invest more of their tax dollars within their municipalities. We need to work with the municipal friends because they're just another form of government that we have to work with in this province. And we're dedicated to that with Buffalo Party.
Thank you. Mr. Wyatt.
We have a revenue sharing program in this province that's the envy of the country. We continue to provide more and more funding to the municipalities to help support what they need to do in their municipalities to provide the infrastructure and the services that people in those cities and those municipalities around this province need. We've just provided $150 million in municipal infrastructure enhancement program to the federal or to the municipalities as a result of the $2 billion infrastructure booster shot that we put into the economy after the budget came out. So we're clear in terms of our investment, in terms of our commitment to continue to invest with municipalities across this province so that they can provide the kinds of infrastructure. We've got a funding arrangement with the federal government under the ISIP program, which we can lever federal money from with the municipalities and the province to help continue to improve that, whether that's in transit, whether that's in community, culture and recreational project, or whether that's in green infrastructure projects right across Saskatchewan.
Thank you. Mr. Wright.
Thank you, John. I think we'll probably need to go the route that some other provinces have taken when they started grappling with the issue of infrastructure funding for municipalities, and that's that we have so many municipalities and we are in competition with each other for the tax base to the bottom. So we need to consider maybe some type of regional government and maybe some type of, instead of revenue sharing, tax raising ability sharing. So just to give you an example, we have White City and Emerald Park, RM of Edenwold, Pilot Butte, just to the east of the city, and we have the RM of Sherwood. We have Pence. We have things to the south, we have things to the north. There's lots of levels of municipal government that compete based on property taxes, they compete based on environmental regulations. So that's not any way to run our modern society, that depending on how the RM lines were drawn 100 years ago, that's where we're going to have development or not. So we're proposing that we rethink how things are done in this province, and we have maybe regional levels of governance, and that we give these levels of governance authority maybe over income tax and sales tax.
Thank you very much. We're going to move to closing comments now. 2 minutes for each person or each candidate, and we're going to start with you, Mr. Wright.
Well, thank you very much, John. I've been very glad to be here to hear what the other candidates have had to say and to send our green message out to the people of the province. We've had a little bit of a chance to talk about our plan to build renewable energy infrastructure. We've had a little bit of a chance to talk about our plan to build education for reconciliation so that we can have multilingual education in the language of our choice across this province. We've talked about the fact that we're the only party that does not receive donations from the major corporate interests. So if you're worried about somebody standing up to the banks and standing up to Mosaic, standing up to Cameco, standing up to the Realtors Association, although thank you for having us here, and, you know, to all the other construction associations. I'm telling you, we're the only party that's running across the province that has not received their dollar. So we're not running on their dime. We're running on the dime of people that have donated to us. People have donated small amounts. And that's how you can trust what's going to be happening. We've heard of government. They're not ashamed that there was money taken in the GTH. This person is not ashamed that they take money from big companies, and they think that's just fine. So that's not what we think is fine. We think that we can have a province for everybody, that we're not funded by the big companies. We're just funded by people like you and me. And so on October 26th, I would sincerely urge people to get out there and to vote. And then if you do vote, then let's spend the next 4 years complaining, because we'll get an even better government if we're all engaged and we're all working together to make sure that the powers that be know that we are upset and that we want better. So just to reiterate, we're the party that's going for reconciliation. We're the party that's going for sustainability in funding. We're the party that's going for cleanliness in political donations. We're the party that you can count on to do that. I'm asking, please lend us your vote, October 26th. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Mr. Sierra.
I have to correct Mr. Wright with the Green Party over here. We don't receive funding from other entities as well. But hey, they're only worrying about themselves over there. We're the only party who's willing to fight for Saskatchewan, for our fair deal within Confederation. We're only the party who's willing to renegotiate the equalization payments. We're the only party who's willing to stand up to Ottawa and say enough is enough, we want to control our own province. We're the only party who's willing to put in a fight for the people of Saskatchewan, to increase jobs, to not close down oil fields and oil wells that are inactive, but we're not even going to touch with the Sask party paying out Ottawa's money for closing down inactive wells, but not orphan wells. We need to do better and clean up the economic and the ecological disaster that's out there of these other ones that are not even active anymore and are rotting out in the fields. We're the only ones who want to fight for the people of Saskatchewan. We're the only ones that need to be in power for an official opposition to hold the Saskatchewan Party to an accountability they have not been held at. And we're going to stop them from dealing with their corrupt friends down in Ottawa and their corrupt Liberal buddies out east.
Thank you very much. Mr. Wyan.
Well, thanks very much, John, for moderating the debate tonight, and thanks to my fellow candidates on the stage who took time to engage in this very, very important topic. Well, for us, the ballot question is very simple. Who do you trust to lead the economic recovery in our province? And I think the answer is clear, and you've seen that this evening, and that's the Saskatchewan Party under the leadership of Scott Moe. We have a plan to invest in infrastructure while balancing the need for fiscal responsibility. That's what the people of Saskatchewan want. We have $7.5 billion over the next 2 years directly into the construction sector, all while incenting homeowners and businesses to do the same and retaining you to do the work in your home province. With the advance polls now open, the election week now kicks off, I would ask you to remember that the Saskatchewan Party has a plan to lead a strong recovery, a plan to make life more affordable, and a plan to balance the budget. The NDP are a risk we can't afford. They put billions of uncosted promises, and you've heard tonight they have no plan to pay for it. So starting today, you have an opportunity to vote for a strong recovery and a strong Saskatchewan. I'd ask that you please continue to stay safe out there as you've head to the polls, and thank you very much for all you've done to help curb the spread of COVID-19. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Mr. Witherspoon.
Well, thank you, John, to you in the Chamber and all the business partners for the forum here tonight. Thank you to those that have joined us here tonight from the respective parties. The fact is that Saskatchewan people are enduring a serious challenge in this province right now. When we look at the economic hardship that Saskatchewan families and local businesses were facing, that was a challenge and a hardship long before COVID-19, made much worse by the choices of the current government that have jacked up the cost of living, that have brought forward taxes like the tax on the PST on construction labor, that's the epitome of a job-killing tax that's left Saskatchewan people with the lowest wages, that's left classrooms without the supports that they need. So this is an incredibly important time for this province to make sure that we stop those damaging cuts to our classrooms and healthcare, that we invest in those classrooms, that we invest in mental health and addiction services and end those delays that are so tragic and so costly for so many, that we act in a meaningful way on reconciliation, that we make life more affordable for Saskatchewan families and seniors that are on fixed incomes and facing such pressure upon them. And very importantly, we need to get this economy back on its feet. Amidst all those pressures, we see a Sask Party government that's growing incredibly tired, that's growing arrogant, that's failing Saskatchewan people, and that's scandal-plagued without any accountability, without being honest to the people of the province, which is why it leaves Saskatchewan people with an important choice. And I believe it's time for change in Saskatchewan. And we're ready to partner and work with Saskatchewan people to deliver that change that makes life more affordable, that doesn't sell off our crown corporations as the Sask Party has tried, but builds on those crown corporations for generations, driving economic activity and making life more affordable. And that puts people back to work. Ends the relentless outsourcing that we see with our hard-earned public dollars on public projects to out-of-province and out-of-country corporations, instead building Saskatchewan with Saskatchewan workers and companies. Taking the PST off of construction labor to fire up this economy and recognizing the needed investment in Saskatchewan people. The status quo doesn't cut it. It's time for change. It's time to put people first.
Thank you very much. Bruno, you get the hammer. Close it down.
Thank you. It's a tough act to follow, as they say. And yes, because basically we are only 3 people in the Liberal Party of Saskatchewan. That's not much, but we are mighty. But we have to remember, we are Saskatchewan. We are the Rough Riders. We have the small economy. We have the elders. We have a smart population. What would you do if I were to put you back 20 years ago and said, you know what, everything had changed? We have seniors who are dying now. We have small families, single mom who are still being abused by their old partners. We have families who are dealing with Alzheimer's because their partner, and that is my partner, who is suffering. And it's really painful because there's absolutely nothing which is affordable for us at the present time. There is no community, there is no village as we saw in Europe where we have Alzheimer's people gathering together. We're just in small boxes. We don't expand. But we are better than that. We're looking for the future. We're looking for the 21st century. I'm even looking at my wife for a very long time, but we are Saskatchewan, we are strong. Thank you.
Merci. Well, first thing I want to do is thank each and every one of you for being part of the democratic process. So important to everything that we do in this country of ours. So thank you so very much for being part of the process. And thank you, all of you, for watching here tonight. We encourage you to stick around and watch the next show, which will be about social services and Indigenous engagement. Well, that'll start here at 8 o'clock. We look forward to that debate as well. I want to thank the Saskatchewan Realtors Association. I want to thank the Regina Region Home Builders, Access Communications for all that you do in all the communities throughout the province here, Regina Downtown, Regina's Warehouse District, and the Regina District Chamber of Commerce. Now, the most important thing, the debate was great, but the most important thing, please get out and vote. It is so important that you get out and vote. Thank you very much. Have a wonderful evening.
Live debate coverage is brought to you by the Regina and District Chamber of Commerce, the Saskatchewan Realtors Association, the Regina and Region Home Builders Association, Regina Downtown, and the Regina Warehouse District.
October 26th is Provincial Election Day, and Saskatchewan residents have the responsibility to choose the candidates who will best serve our province. All eligible voters may vote for the member of the Legislative Assembly who will represent the constituency in which they live. There are 61 constituencies in Saskatchewan. Each constituency elects one member to the Legislative Assembly. To find out which constituency you live in, or to check if you're registered to vote, call 1-877-958-8683 or visit www.elections.sk.ca. The Arm River constituency is located in south central Saskatchewan. Access Now communities located in Arm River are Craik, Davidson, Outlook, and Raymore. Voters in Arm River are eligible to elect one of the following candidates. Steve Forbes, representing the Progressive Conservative Party. Tiffany Giesbrecht, representing the Green Party. Cam Goth, representing the New Democratic Party. Or Dana Skoropat, representing the Saskatchewan Party. The Batoche constituency is located in central Saskatchewan. Access Now communities located in Batoche are Cudworth, Canistano, and Wachau. Voters in Batoche are eligible to elect one of the following candidates. Lon Borgerson, representing the New Democratic Party. Hamish Graham, representing the Green Party. Carrie Harris, representing the Progressive Conservative Party. Or incumbent Delbert Kirsch, representing the Saskatchewan Party. The Battlefords constituency is located in western Saskatchewan. It is the area surrounding and including the Access Now communities of Battleford and North Battleford. Voters in the Battlefords are eligible to elect one of the following candidates. Jeremy Cockrell, representing the Saskatchewan Party. Joey Reynolds, representing the Green Party. Or Amber Stewart, representing the New Democratic Party. Or Harry Zamonski, representing the Progressive Conservative Party. The Bigger Sask Valley constituency is located in western Saskatchewan. Access Now communities located in Bigger Sask Valley are Bigger, Dalmany, and Langham. Voters in Bigger Sask Valley are eligible to elect one of the following candidates. Twyla Harris Nasseri, representing the New Democratic Party. Darcy Robillard, representing the Green Party. Trevor Simpson, representing the Buffalo Party. Or incumbent Randy Weeks, representing the Saskatchewan Party. The Cannington constituency is located in the southeast corner of Saskatchewan. Access Now communities located in Cannington are Arcola, Carlisle, Carnduff, Lampman, Oxbow, Redvers, and Stoughton. Voters in Cannington are eligible to elect one of the following candidates. Jana Forrest, representing the Green Party. Daryl Harrison, representing the Saskatchewan Party. Wes Smith, representing the Buffalo Party. Or Diane Tweetmeyer, representing the New Democratic Party. The Kenora-Pelly constituency is located on the east side of Saskatchewan. Access Now communities located in Kenora-Pelly are Kenora, Kamsack, Norquay, and Springside. Voters in Kenora-Pelly are eligible to elect one of the following candidates. Incumbent Terry Dennis, representing the Saskatchewan Party. Breton Gattinger, representing the Green Party. Robert Hayes, representing the Buffalo Party. Or Stacy Strakowski, representing the New Democratic Party. The Carrot River Valley constituency is located on the east side of Saskatchewan. Access Now communities located in Carrot River Valley are Carrot River, Hudson Bay, Nipawin, and Tisdale. Voters in Carrot River Valley are eligible to elect one of the following candidates. Tom Becker, representing the Green Party. Incumbent Fred Bradshaw, representing the Saskatchewan Party. Glenn Leeson, representing the Progressive Conservative Party. Or Rod McCorriston, representing the New Democratic Party. The Cumberland constituency is the northeast quarter of Saskatchewan. Access Now communities located in Cumberland are Air-Ronge, Denair Beach, and La Ronge. Voters in Cumberland are eligible to elect one of the following candidates. Darren Deschambault, representing the Saskatchewan Party. Aaron Uchu, representing the Green Party. Or incumbent Doyle Vermette, representing the New Democratic Party. The Cutknife Turtleford constituency is located on the west side of Saskatchewan. Access Now communities located in Cutknife Turtleford are Lashburn, Maidstone, Unity, and Wilkie. Voters in Cutknife Turtleford are eligible to elect one of the following candidates. Ryan Domator, representing the Saskatchewan Party. Matt Fedler, representing the New Democratic Party. Patrick McNally, representing the Green Party. Or Richard Nelson, representing the Buffalo Party. The Estevan constituency is located near the southeast corner of Saskatchewan. Access Now communities located in the Estevan constituency are Beanfate, the City of Estevan, and Mydale. Voters in the Estevan constituency are eligible to elect one of the following candidates. Incumbent Laurie Carr, representing the Saskatchewan Party. Seth Lendrum, representing the New Democratic Party. Scott Myers, representing the Green Party. Linda Sopp, representing the Progressive Conservative Party. Or Phil Zajac, representing the Buffalo Party. The Humboldt-Watrous constituency is located in central Saskatchewan. Access Now communities located in Humboldt-Watrous are Allen, Humboldt, Lanigan, Watrous, and Young. Voters in Humboldt-Watrous are eligible to elect one of the following candidates. Rose Bushall, representing the Progressive Conservative Party. Incumbent Donna Harpower, representing the Saskatchewan Party. Constance Moffenbauer, representing the Buffalo Party. Wendy Sekulik, representing the New Democratic Party. Or Jim Tournier, representing the Green Party. The Indian Head Milestone constituency is located in southern Saskatchewan. Access Now communities located in Indian Head Milestone are Balgony, Copper Sands, Fort Capel, Indian Head, Milestone, and Pilot Butte. Voters in Indian Head Milestone are eligible to elect one of the following candidates. Jared Clark, representing the New Democratic Party. Elvin Manziak, representing the Progressive Conservative Party. Incumbent Don McMorris, representing the Saskatchewan Party. Or Billy Patterson, representing the Green Party. The Kelvington-Wadena constituency is located near the east side of Saskatchewan. Access Now communities located in Kelvington-Wadena are Foam Lake, Kelvington, Theodore, Wadena, and Wynyard. Voters in Kelvington-Wadena are eligible to elect one of the following candidates. Justin Crobot, representing the Buffalo Party. Melissa Fletcher, representing the Green Party. Wayne Masterchuk, representing the Progressive Conservative Party. Incumbent Hugh Nerline, representing the Saskatchewan Party. Or Linda Patenaude, representing the New Democratic Party. The Kelvington-Wadena constituency is located near the east side of Saskatchewan. Access Now communities located in Kelvington-Wadena are Foam Lake, Kelvington, Theodore, Wadena, and Wynyard. Voters in Kelvington-Wadena are eligible to elect one of the following candidates. Justin Crobot, representing the Buffalo Party. Melissa Fletcher, representing the Green Party. Wayne Masterchuk, representing the Progressive Conservative Party. Incumbent Hugh Nerline, representing the Saskatchewan Party. Or Linda Patenaude, representing the New Democratic Party. The Last Mountain Touchwood constituency is located in southern Saskatchewan. Access Now communities located in Last Mountain Touchwood are Ituna and Southie. Voters in Last Mountain Touchwood are eligible to elect one of the following candidates. Gordon Bradford, representing the Buffalo Party. Travis Kiesig, representing the Saskatchewan Party. Tara Nordal, representing the New Democratic Party. Justin Stranick, representing the Green Party. Or Victor Teese, representing the Progressive Conservative Party. The Lumsden Morse constituency is located in southern Saskatchewan. Access Now communities located in Lumsden Morse are Lumsden, Regina Beach, and Rollo. Voters in Lumsden Morse are eligible to elect one of the following candidates. Les Gilliman, representing the Buffalo Party. Isaiah Hunter, representing the Green Party. Nick Lewis, representing the New Democratic Party. Or incumbent Lyle Stewart, representing the Saskatchewan Party. The Martensville-Warman constituency is an area north of Saskatoon. Access Now communities located in this constituency are Martensville, Osler, and Warman. Voters in Martensville-Warman are eligible to elect one of the following candidates. Terry Jensen, representing the Saskatchewan Party. Melvin Polipchuk, representing the Green Party. Wade Sira, leader of the Buffalo Party. Or Carla Streeton, representing the New Democratic Party. The Meadow Lake constituency is located near the west side of Saskatchewan and includes the Access Now communities of Meadow Lake and St. Walburg. Voters in the Meadow Lake constituency are eligible to elect one of the following candidates. Incumbent Jeremy Harrison, representing the Saskatchewan Party. Harmony King, representing the New Democratic Party. Or Carol Van Dale, representing the Green Party. The Melfort constituency is located in central Saskatchewan. Access Now communities located in this constituency are Melfort and Watson. Voters in the Melfort constituency are eligible to elect one of the following candidates. Matthew Diaku, representing the Green Party. Incumbent Todd Gowdy, representing the Saskatchewan Party. Lorne Schrader, representing the New Democratic Party. Or Dave Waldner, representing the Buffalo Party. The Melville Saltcoats constituency is located near the southeast corner of Saskatchewan. Access Now communities located in Melville Saltcoats are Bredenbury, Churchbridge, Esterhazy, Langenburg, Melville, and Saltcoats. Voters in Melville Saltcoats are eligible to elect one of the following candidates. Bonnie Galanzowski, representing the New Democratic Party. Incumbent Warren Kading, representing the Saskatchewan Party. Jack Powless, representing the Green Party. Or Trevor Ratty, representing the Progressive Conservative Party. The Moosomin constituency is located near the southeast corner of Saskatchewan. Access Now communities located in this constituency are Grenfell, Kipling, Moosomin, and Whitewood. Voters in the Moosomin constituency are eligible to elect one of the following candidates. Incumbent Stephen Bonk, representing the Saskatchewan Party. Ken Burton, representing the New Democratic Party. Marjorie Graham, representing the Green Party. Or Frank Surface, representing the Progressive Conservative Party. The Regina Coronation Park constituency is located in north-central Regina. Its boundaries are Trifonov Crescent, Carnegie Street, Partridge Crescent, Albert Street, and Ring Road on the north, Winnipeg Street on the east, the CN Rail Line, Albert Street, Avonhurst Drive, and 3rd Avenue North on the south, and Pasqua Street on the west. Voters in Regina Coronation Park are eligible to elect one of the following candidates. Irene Browatsky, representing the Green Party. Nor Berkey, representing the New Democratic Party. David Coates, representing the Progressive Conservative Party. or incumbent Mark Docherty representing the Saskatchewan Party. The Regina Douglas Park constituency is located in southeastern Regina. Its boundaries are Ross Avenue on the north, Park Street, Victoria Avenue and Ring Road on the east, Wascana Creek on the south, and Broad Street, College Avenue, Osler Street, 13th Avenue, and Winnipeg Street on the west. Voters in Regina Douglas Park are eligible to elect one of the following candidates. Sarah Healy, representing the Progressive Conservative Party. Victor Lau, representing the Green Party. Nadeem Naz, representing the Saskatchewan Party. Or incumbent Nicole Sauer, representing the New Democratic Party. The Regina Elphinstone Centre constituency is located in central Regina. Its boundaries are 3rd Avenue North, Avonhurst Drive, Albert Street and the CN Rail Line on the north, Winnipeg Street on the east, 13th Avenue on the south, and Louvain Drive on the west. Voters in Regina Elphinstone Centre are eligible to elect one of the following candidates. Mira Conway, representing the New Democratic Party. Independent candidate Rolf Hartloff. Naomi Hunter, leader of the Green Party. Caesar Khan, representing the Saskatchewan Party. Or Don Kirk, representing the Progressive Conservative Party. The Regina Gardner Park constituency is located in southeast Regina. Its boundaries are Ross Avenue, Ring Road, Dewdney Avenue, Cannon Street, Bedford Avenue, Fleet Street, Thompson Avenue, Fines Drive, Coleman Crescent, and Victoria Avenue on the north, Quants Gate, Windsor Park Road, Houghton Road, and Woodland Grove Drive on the east, Aaron's Road, Prince of Wales Drive, and Arcola Avenue on the south, and Ring Road, Victoria Avenue, and Park Street on the west. Voters in Regina Gardner Park are eligible to elect one of the following candidates. Faisal Hagi, representing the New Democratic Party. Incumbent Jean Makowski, representing the Saskatchewan Party. Helmi Scott Ugu, representing the Green Party. Or David Teese, representing the Progressive Conservative Party. The Regina Lakeview constituency is located in south central Regina. Its boundaries are 13th Avenue on the north, Osler Street, College Avenue, Broad Street, and Wascana Creek on the east, 23rd Avenue, Old Broad Street, Lakeshore Drive, Hill Boulevard, Albert Street, and 25th Avenue on the south, and Queen Street, Hill Avenue, and Pasqua Street on the west. Voters in Regina Lakeview are eligible to elect one of the following candidates. Incumbent Carla Beck, representing the New Democratic Party. Megan Patterson, representing the Saskatchewan Party. Bruno Sau, representing the Saskatchewan Liberal Association. Or Michael Wright, representing the Green Party. The Regina Northeast constituency is located in northeast Regina. Its boundaries are the city limits on the north, Prince of Wales Drive and Eastgate Drive on the east, Victoria Avenue, Coleman Crescent, Fines Drive, Thompson Avenue, Fleet Street, Bedford Avenue, Cannon Street, Dewdney Avenue, Ring Road, and Ross Avenue on the south, and Winnipeg Street, Ring Road, and Albert Street on the west. Voters in Regina Northeast are eligible to elect one of the following candidates. Gary Grewal, representing the Saskatchewan Party. Anthony Major, representing the Green Party. Incumbent Jens Peterson, representing the New Democratic Party. Corey Rempel, representing the Progressive Conservative Party. Or Jeff Walters, representing the Saskatchewan Liberal Association. The Regina Pasqua constituency is located in southwest Regina. Its boundaries are Highway 730 and Dewdney Avenue on the north, Louvain Drive, 13th Avenue, Pasqua Street, Hill Avenue, Queen Street, 25th Avenue, and Albert Street on the east, Highway 1 on the south, and Campbell Street, Hill Avenue, Courtney Street, and the city limits on the west. Voters in Regina Pasqua are eligible to elect one of the following candidates. Bajan Brar, representing the New Democratic Party. Incumbent Mohammed Fayaz, representing the Saskatchewan Party. Harry Frank, representing the Progressive Conservative Party. Or Heather Lau, representing the Green Party. The Regina-Rochdale constituency is located in northwest Regina. Its boundaries are the city limits, Courtney Street, Armour Road, and Highway 11 on the north, Albert Street on the east, Makowski Crescent, Abention Bay, Brock Bay, Juniper Drive, Bright Bay, Kenderdine Drive, Cribbs Bay, Courtney Street, and the CN Rail Line on the south, and Pinkey Road on the west. Voters in Regina-Rochdale are eligible to elect one of the following candidates. Brett Esty, representing the New Democratic Party. Murray Morehart, representing the Progressive Conservative Party. Sarah Risk, representing the Green Party. Or incumbent Laura Ross, representing the Saskatchewan Party. The Regina-Rosemont constituency is located in West Regina. Its boundaries are the CN Rail Line, Courtney Street, 9th Avenue North, McCarthy Boulevard, and 1st Avenue North on the north, Louvain Drive on the east, Dewdney Avenue on the south, and Pinkey Road on the west. Voters in Regina-Rosemont are eligible to elect one of the following candidates. Chris McCullough, representing the Progressive Conservative Party. Alex Naw, representing the Saskatchewan Party. James Park, representing the Green Party. Or incumbent Trent Wotherspoon, representing the New Democratic Party. The Regina University constituency is located in southeast Regina. Its boundaries are Hill Boulevard, Lakeshore Drive, Old Broad Street, 23rd Avenue, Wascana Creek, Ring Road, and Arcola Avenue on the north, Pilot Butte Creek, Wascana Creek, and the city limits on the east, the city limits and Ring Road on the south, and Albert Street on the west. Voters in Regina University are eligible to elect one of the following candidates. Incumbent Tina Beaudry-Meller, representing the Saskatchewan Party. Debbie Nill, representing the Progressive Conservative Party. Tanner Wallace, representing the Green Party. Or Alina Young, representing the New Democratic Party. The Regina Walsh Acres constituency is located in northwest Regina. Its boundaries are Blakeney Drive, Goodmurphy Bay, Mawson Bay, Davy Bay, Hampshire Place, Cook Crescent, Hopkins Crescent, Rowell Crescent, Stanley Crescent, Dryburgh Crescent, Sandison Crescent, Price Crescent, French Crescent, Craigie Bay, Brulette Bay, and Jackson Bay on the north, Pasqua Street on the east, 1st Avenue North, McCarthy Boulevard, and 9th Avenue North on the south, and Courtney Street on the west. Voters in Regina Walsh Acres are eligible to elect one of the following candidates. Ken Gray, leader of the Progressive Conservative Party. Kelly Hardy, representing the New Democratic Party. Derek Myers, representing the Saskatchewan Party. Or independent candidate Sandra Morin. The Regina-Wascana Plains constituency is an area east of Regina. Its boundaries in Regina are everything east of Woodland Grove Drive, Aaron's Road, Prince of Wales Drive, Arcola Avenue, Pilot Butte Creek, Wascana Creek, and the southeast city limits. Other Access Now communities located in Regina-Wascana Plains are Emerald Park and White City. Voters in Regina-Wascana Plains are eligible to elect one of the following candidates. Sonia Doyle, representing the Green Party. Independent candidate Nestor Mryglod. Mike Sinclair, representing the New Democratic Party. Or incumbent Christine Tell, representing the Saskatchewan Party. The Rosetown-Elrose constituency is located in west central Saskatchewan. Access Now communities located in this constituency are Delisle and Rosetown. Voters in Rosetown-Elrose are eligible to elect one of the following candidates. Brenda Edel, representing the New Democratic Party. Adrian Janssens, representing the Progressive Conservative Party. Incumbent Jim Ryder, representing the Saskatchewan Party. Or Justina Robinson, representing the Green Party. The Rostern-Shellbrook constituency is located in west central Saskatchewan. Access Now communities located in this constituency are Rostern, Shellbrook, and Spiritwood. Voters in Rostern-Shellbrook are eligible to elect one of the following candidates. Yvonne Choquette, representing the Progressive Conservative Party. Trina Miller, representing the New Democratic Party. Incumbent Scott Moe, leader of the Saskatchewan Party. Or Larry Neufeld, representing the Green Party. The Weyburn-Big Muddy constituency is located in southern Saskatchewan. Access Now communities located in this constituency are the City of Weyburn and the Town of Yellowgrass. Voters in Weyburn-Big Muddy are eligible to elect one of the following candidates. Shane Calais, representing the Green Party. Incumbent Dustin Duncan, representing the Saskatchewan Party. Colin Keith, representing the Buffalo Party. Or Regan Lanning, representing the New Democratic Party. The Wood River constituency is located in southern Saskatchewan. Access Now communities located in Wood River are Coronach and Gravelburg. Voters in Wood River are eligible to elect one of the following candidates. Kimberly Sue Goodtrack, representing the Green Party. Incumbent David Merritt, representing the Saskatchewan Party. Or Roger Morgan, representing the New Democratic Party. The Yorkton constituency is the City of Yorkton. Voters in Yorkton are eligible to elect one of the following. Carter Antoine, representing the New Democratic Party. Judy Murgull, representing the Green Party. Or incumbent Greg Ottenbright, representing the Saskatchewan Party. Election Day is Monday, October 26th. If you are a registered voter, you will receive a voter information card in the mail before Election Day. It will tell you where and when to vote. If you are unable to vote on Election Day, advance polls will be available. Check your voter information card for advance dates and locations. If you are a hospital patient, homebound due to a disability, or live in a personal care home, arrangements can be made to allow you to vote. If you find it more convenient, you can also apply to vote by mail. For more information, call 1-877-958-8683 or visit www.elections.sk.ca.
Doesn't feel quite so long with Access Rural Internet. With unlimited data comes unlimited streaming and browsing, so you can warm up with your fill of Netflix originals or catch up with friends and family on social media. Plus, with Access's low prices and zero installation fees, you can put your money towards what really matters, like upgrading to that new sled. Browse more for less with Access Rural Internet. Visit myaccess.ca for more information.
Live debate coverage is brought to you by the Regina and District Chamber of Commerce, the Saskatchewan Realtors Association, the Regina and Region Home Builders Association, Regina Downtown, and the Regina Warehouse District.
Good evening and welcome to Decision 2020. Your province, your vote. On behalf of the event sponsors, which we just mentioned, I'd like to welcome you to tonight's debate, which will be on social services and Indigenous engagement. We'll go right to introducing you to the candidates who are with us today. So we'll start with Paul Merriman from the Saskatchewan Party. Thank you so much for being here. From the Liberal Party, Bruno Schout. Pretty close?
No, you could say Sayu. That's
Sayu,
fine.
okay.
Thank you.
We're getting there. We're getting
Yes.
there. From the Buffalo Party, Richard Nelson. Thank you so much for coming. Appreciate that. From the New Democratic Party, Nicole Sauer. I don't know why it's not on my list here, but thank you so much, Nicole. And from the Green Party, I'd like to welcome, again, my notes are not very good, Naomi Hunter. Thank you so much. Appreciate it. We'll start with, I'll tell you a little bit about the format. The format tonight is each candidate will be given 2 minutes for opening comments and closing comments. Each candidate will be given equal opportunity to answer each question. They'll be given 1 minute to do so. In addition, each candidate will be given an opportunity to ask another candidate of their choosing a question. Now, there's 20 seconds to ask the question, and there's 45 seconds to answer the question. We've had to have been a little, give it a little bit of leeway on that, because some people like to take a lot of time to ask their questions. Anyways, we'll see how that goes. Each candidate has been put into a draw for various different aspects of the debate tonight. 1 is for podium position. 2 is for opening comments. The reverse will be closing comments. 3 is who starts the questions. And 4 is who starts the questions to each candidate and how that flows from there. So having said all of that, you didn't come here to listen to me, so we'll start with the candidates, and we'll start with our opening questions, or opening comments, sorry. So the opening comments we'll start with the Buffalo Party, and we'll start with you, Mr. Nelson.
Thank you. My name is Richard Nelson, and I'm running for the constituency of Cutknife-Turtleford. I'd like to start by thanking John and the sponsors and all the other candidates for attending tonight and taking part. I'd like to also start out by saying that we are thankful to be here on the unceded territories governed by treaties 2, 4, 5, 6, 8, and 10, I believe, and the traditional home of the Métis Nation. Tonight we're going to be speaking about social services and child welfare in the province, and this is a very, very important topic for us in this province. And we know that the current regime is not producing the positive outcomes that we desire. In fact, in 2019 we have more than 3,400 children in the custody of social services, and that's the most since 2008. So we see that there's definitely a correlation between child apprehension and the economy, and it ebbs and flows with our economy. We also see that there's disproportionate outcomes in this area. In fact, Indigenous children made up as many as 75% of apprehended children, and now it's somewhere between 82 and 86. I've heard conflicting numbers. Either way, absolutely unacceptable numbers. But what it shows us is that the pandemic is affecting this, and it's affecting different communities differently, and so we have a fairness problem, and that's a problem as well. So to solve a problem like this, we really need to solve the fairness problem, which means we have to solve the opportunity deficit. There has to be opportunities for everyone. Every child in this province should wake up every morning with a dream and believe that they can achieve it. And that's the Saskatchewan that we all want to live in. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We will now go to Ms. Hunter.
Hello, my name's Naomi Hunter. I'm the leader of the Saskatchewan Green Party and MLA candidate for Regina Elphinstone Centre. The Saskatchewan Greens' core principles are based on respect for diversity and social justice. These are things that aren't just press releases, these are actually what we base our party on. I believe strongly that we need to make sure that we have anti-suicide legislation This was something that was tabled and voted down by all Sask Party MLAs. And Tristan Durocher walked all the way from L'Orange, Saskatchewan, set up a teepee on the lawn, and asked for nothing more than Scott Moe to walk out the door and go talk to him. I'm a fitness instructor, and I'm wondering if that was too strenuous for Mr. Moe. As Premier, I would immediately enact meaningful suicide legislation with set target limits and the supports needed for northern communities. I was born in the north, also in the riding of Cutknife Turtleford. And I grew up in a community that had frequent boil water advisories. Another issue that I feel very strongly about. It's unconscionable to me that 30% of First Nation communities in Saskatchewan at any one time have boil water advisories. This is something that needs to be addressed immediately, and I would table legislation on this issue within the first 100 days in office. I feel that as Saskatchewan people, we are community builders. We are compassionate people who believe that everyone should have what's best in life. And some of my candidates running in this election, I've just interviewed Aaron Uchu for Cumberland. He is living on a SED program and disability of less than $500 a month. That's for everything, for him to pay his rent and what he needs.
Thank you. You're out of time. Thank you very much. We'll now go to Ms. Sauer.
Thank you, first of all, for the opportunity to be here tonight, as well as for all the other candidates for being here and for everyone who made this debate possible. My name is Nicole Saar, and for the last 4.5 years, I've had the absolute honor of serving as the MLA for Regina Douglas Park. I'm seeking re-election as a New Democrat because I believe this province is headed down the wrong path. That cuts to public health care and education are a bad idea at any time, but during a pandemic, they're downright dangerous. That government has a responsibility to create local jobs for local workers on local projects instead of cutting sweetheart deals to their friends and corporate donors. That we have a responsibility to commit to meaningful reconciliation with Indigenous people in our province instead of telling an Indigenous activist fighting for a suicide prevention strategy to get off the lawn of the legislature. Not because it is the moral choice, which it is, but because each and every one of us in Saskatchewan benefits when everyone in Saskatchewan has the chance to live their best life and contribute to their full potential. That belief is why I'm proud to be a part of a team that will, among other things, work with the federal government and First Nations and Métis governments to close the gap in health, employment, justice, and education between Indigenous and non-Indigenous people, invest $10 million to act on the calls to action of the Truth and Reconciliation Commission, reform our child welfare system, working with the FSIN and First Nations to increase control and autonomy over child intervention on reserves, and restore funding to the NORTEP program. Indeed, many of these things that motivated my decision to run as a New Democrat are among the topics we'll be discussing tonight. So I'm looking forward to having the opportunity to address them.
Thank you very much. Bruno.
Thank you. Thank you, John. Ladies and gentlemen, mesdames et messieurs, bonsoir, good evening. My name is Bruno Sahu. I'm the bilingual candidate for our Regina Lakeview constituency, as well as a representative of the Liberal Party of Saskatchewan. As a preamble for tonight's discussion, I would like to make the following statement. Because we don't see injustice from purposely erased history. The Saskatchewan Liberal Party is committed to move forward in partnership with Indigenous nations, namely Treaty 2, 4, 5, 6, 8, 10, and the Métis Nation, in the spirit of reconciliation and collaboration under the Saskatchewan motto, from many people's strengths, to permanently erect, raise, and display the flags of these 7 treaty nations on 7 individual poles of equal height and stature of the Saskatchewan flag on top of the Saskatchewan Legislative Building. Furthermore, and to give meaning to our Treaty 4 acknowledgement for Regina and our constituency of Regina Lakeview, I would like to begin by acknowledging that our constituency of Regina Lakeview is on the traditional lands referred as Treaty 4 territory, the original land of the Cree, Ojibwe, Saulteaux, Dakota, Nakota, Lakota, and the homeland of the Métis Nation. We respect and honor the treaties that were made on all territories. We acknowledge the harms and mistakes that were made in the past, and we are committed to move forward in partnership with Indigenous nations in the spirit of reconciliation and collaboration. Thank you. Merci. Marcy Mickwick.
Thank you. Mr. Merriman.
Good evening, and thank you very much for the opportunity to speak to you tonight. I want to thank you, John, Access, the sponsors, and the candidates for putting your name forward. The Saskatchewan Party has a plan for a strong Saskatchewan. We believe that a strong economy leads to stronger communities and stronger families. Over our time in government, we have made important investments to ensure that Saskatchewan stays strong. In this year's budget, our government provided $213 million in targeted investments to meet the priorities of Saskatchewan's Indigenous communities, businesses, and organizations. These investments include $27 million specifically committed for Indigenous skills training and employment initiatives, and $5.2 million for essential skills program aimed at on-reserve training. In 2019, there were over 11,400 more First Nations and Métis people employed in the province compared to 2007. That's a 31% increase. In 2015, the Saskatchewan Party government developed a disability strategy in consultation with the disability community. It provides a framework for government to offer an array of programs and services across all ministries that support people with different abilities, helping make Saskatchewan the best place in Canada to live for people with different abilities. As part of our disability strategy, if re-elected, our government will introduce accessibility legislation that will be aimed at removing and preventing accessibility barriers. The Saskatchewan Party government has created and implemented the Saskatchewan Assured Income for Disability SED program in 2009 to provide income support and a greater choice for services for individuals with different abilities. SED benefits have increased 4 times since its creation, and a total of $1.8 billion has been invested into this program. Thank you for the opportunity to discuss these important issues tonight, and I look forward to the questions.
Thank you very much. We will get to the questions right away, and we are going to start with you, Mr. Nelson. And the first question is, what is your party's perspective on the calls to action, and what do we need to do?
Thank you very much. The Buffalo Party sees ourselves as partners with First Nations. The Buffalo Party is trying to fight for a fair deal for Saskatchewan. We would like to be independent and govern ourselves. This is exactly what First Nations are fighting to do. They've had the right to self-govern since they signed treaty. Yet, we have a government with a whole stack of papers over there, and they've explained to us all the areas that they'll spend in. And you'll note that they decided where they would spend in those areas. They decided where those monies would go. First Nations in this province have every right to govern themselves. If they are entitled to the funds, give them the funds and let them make the decisions. It's exactly what the Buffalo Party would like to do for Saskatchewan. So we really see ourselves as partners with them. We would partner with First Nations and make sure that the funds that went to them for them to decide what would be best. In fact, I believe First Nations should probably lead the charge in many of these areas since it affects them most and disproportionately. Thank you.
Mr. Marion.
Thank you very much. This is very important to the future of our province and the future of all of our people within Saskatchewan. The government of Saskatchewan has provided responses with 26 out of the 34 calls to action. I think in our reconciliation process, we have to start by looking backwards. And I'm very proud that Premier Moe was the first one to be able to apologize for what had happened to the 60 scoop. This is the first step in reconciliation. The next step is be able to work with our Indigenous partners, both Métis and First Nations, to be able to chart a path forward, not just on the economic, but on the social side of things and the cultural side of things. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We will go to Ms. Hunter.
The studies are out there. We need to implement all the recommendations of the MMIW, the Truth and Reconciliation, and Jordan's Principle. I often hear people say, well, let's do another study. we actually need to act. The way forward is clear, and First Nations people have been calling for these issues to be addressed for a very long time, my entire lifetime. We see a situation in Saskatchewan where First Nations people are disproportionately reflected in our jails, in child and care, and other issues. While Mr. Merriman would attest that his party is dealing with these issues equitably and fairly, I would instead say that the said program that has been introduced by the Sask party is woefully inadequate, and that out on the doorsteps in North Central, which is one of the poorest ridings in Canada, I'm hearing from people that on that same program they're receiving so little that they literally can't exist without other supports that are hard to access during the pandemic.
Thank you. Bruno.
Thank you. Basically, when I read my statement at the beginning of each forum, there's a reason behind it. Saskatchewan was born in 1905. We had the 60 scoop, and we also had the school, the reform school, where Indigenous people were discarded, hurt to the core. But Saskatchewan has a model for many people's strengths. And I remember a child in the class I was substituting. It was a French immersion class, and everybody was working on the different flags their family came from. And this kid came to me and said, Monsieur, which is sir, sir. And I don't have a flag. I said, how come you don't have a flag? He said, no, I don't have a flag. And I said, where are you from? Because I had flag from the Philippines, flag from France, from Africa, from anywhere in the world. No, he said, I don't have a flag. I'm from a reserve next to Regina. And I said, but you do have a flag. It's flag number 34. So I showed him the flag on my iPad. And from there, the kid had an identity. The kid had a life to live. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'll let you go a little over there. I thought that was a really important thing to say. Ms. Sauer.
Thank you. Justice Sinclair's report, the calls to action on the Truth and Reconciliation Commission, the recommendations that come as a result of it are so incredibly important. They come from a long line of work that took the group across the country to hear painful truth from a lot of people. We now need to move on to the reconciliation phase. These calls to action are incredibly important. The Sask Party's response to the calls to action have been nothing but lip service, and I can give you two very specific examples. In the justice side, in 2017, the Sask Party significantly reduced the budget for the Aboriginal Court Worker Program and the Alternative Measures Program. These are specific programs that the Calls to Action report specifically talks about the importance of. This government, the Sask Party government, drastically reduced the funding in those programs and have not reinstated that funding. That is why I say their responses to this calls to action are nothing but lip service. We are committed to investing $10 million to act on the calls to action, and we want to make a government held accountable to those calls to action and that they have to provide those answers annually. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We'll go to the next question, and Mr. Merriam, we'll start with you. We've seen a couple of protests at Wascana Centre over the past couple of years, or a few years. What is your perspective on the protests that included teepees in the park and the most recent protests that we've seen about suicide prevention?
Well, thanks very much, John, for the question. I think it's very important that people, and we did see this with the teepees across the street at two separate occasions, that there was peaceful protests. And I think that that's people's right to be able to provide peaceful protest and make sure that they are abiding by any of the bylaws that the city or the province has. The protests that were out there was able actually to meet with the individuals of the first protest when there were several teepees out there and listen to some of their concerns, and wanted to explain to them what I was doing as a Minister of Social Services in driving out and meeting with chiefs and council on reserve to be able to provide a perspective from the government to say, I'll come to you, I'll find out what your issues are, and then we can start working on them together. And I think that's why that we've been able to be very successful in moving forward on processes like Bill C-92. We've had many agreements, and we have 18 Indigenous First Nation agencies that are providing the service for child and family services in Saskatchewan now.
Thank you very much. Bruno.
Thank you. And it's quite an interesting question because obviously I don't come from Canada. I come from France. I arrived in 1981 and moved from the east to the west. Went up north in Alberta and went to Calgary, where I was part of the Red Lodge at the University of Calgary. When we speak in Saskatchewan from many people's strengths, what are we talking about? White people, settlers? Or are we speaking about, you know what, we are on Treaty number 4. Treaty of the Cree, Ojibwe, Saulteaux, Dakota, Lakota, Nakota. And therefore, the person who came between treaties 2, 4, 5, 6, 8, 10, and the Métis Nations have the ancestral right to be on this particular land. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Sarr.
The two protests that you mentioned were incredibly powerful, and I, along with my NDP colleagues, had the opportunity several times to visit and support both protests as they were going on. We very much supported the issues that they were raising and the concern they were raising about how they were being ignored by the Sask Party government. The second protest, the most recent one in particular, was highlighting the need for a suicide prevention strategy in legislative form in this province, which was a bill that my NDP colleague Doyle Vermette tabled, and every single Sask Party MLA voted against it. The Premier didn't even bother to go out across the door and walk across the street to visit with Mr. DeRocher. These are moments when actions of leaders matter. And Scott Moe couldn't figure out how to walk across the street. It was quite tragic, frankly.
Thank you. Ms. Hunter.
Both of the protests that are referred to, we should actually have legislation in place for the legislative grounds to be available as a sacred space. People should be able to camp out on the grounds of our ledge, at City Hall, wherever they want, as often as possible. Furthermore, I would say that pretty much everything Mr. Merriman had to say on this subject was total crap. Because you know what? He called the police on my friends. And if you're having understanding and feeling like they had the right to be there, then you don't call the cops. Mothers and grandmothers were hauled away. There are many photos on the internet showing that this happened. Then I went and spent all day at court when Tristan DeRocher was also hauled into the justice system. That's right, he was taken to court by the Sask Party. So to me, that's not a very kind and loving way to respond to people who are bringing up extremely important points. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Nelson.
Let's talk for a moment about the protests at the ledge. Here are Indigenous peoples at the ledge demanding their rights to be recognized, demanding their right to govern themselves. The fact that they're at the ledge asking for anything shows that they have not yet been recognized as a level of government. They should have a place at the ledge. They should have a place somewhere. And they don't yet. They don't feel that they do, or they wouldn't be there. This is what the protests are about. The answer is quite simple. Allow First Nations to self-determine, to self-actualize, to self-govern. They have the right. It's easy. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We'll go on to the next question. I keep stepping on my mic wire. We'll start with you, Ms. Hunter, and the question is, we have a crisis with opioids and meth in our province. What needs to be done to address these crises?
Well, I frequently find when it comes to issues like this that the government in play right now is apparently very bad at math. Right now we have one safe injection site in the province, and it's in Saskatoon. We do not have anything further north than that. And if we look at the fact that we're dealing with a crisis situation, having one location is obviously inadequate. And so that needs to be addressed immediately. We need to have further supports, especially in our northern communities. We need to make sure that people are trained and that there is the availability of naloxone and other kits that are needed in order to deal with this crisis. And it has reached a crisis level. People are literally dying of neglect. And if the Social Services Department, led by Mr. Merriman, is unable to do that job, because it is a job, keep people alive, look after people, that's what social services is, then they should step aside and let those who are prepared to actually do something take place. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Sauer.
We absolutely have a crisis in our province right now. When you speak with police and you ask what their number one pressure points are when they're receiving calls, it's mental health and it's addictions. The Sask Party have for far too long ignored the crystal meth and opioid crisis in this province. The Saskatchewan NDP are committed to creating a crystal meth and opioid strategy, something that's actionable and something that's targetable, working with experts in this area. And we're also committed to actually providing funding to that safe injection site in Saskatoon, something that the Sask Party has refused to do.
Thank you very much. Mr. Nelson.
Sure. If we're going to provide funding for anything, it should be for treatment. We are having a crisis in this province, and it is directly related to the economy. And opportunities are the answer to the problem in the long term. But in the short term, we need to deal with the people using. They need to have a place to go. You know, people talk a lot about policing. I don't think police are the right way to deal with the problem. It is spilling out into our streets. They are the ones using, they are the ones bearing the brunt of the pressure. However, let's be honest. Regina has failed. Ottawa has failed. Everybody talks about the opioid crisis. Everybody talks about the meth addiction crisis, but we aren't creating more spaces. We aren't creating intake points. Why don't we have social workers instead of police out to deal with these problems? Why don't we have addictions workers in gangs on the street? No money, no interest. That's why. Buffalo Party would support everybody in need, get them into treatment, find them an opportunity, get them back into life, not pay for a place for them to continue using. Thank you.
Mr. Merriman.
Thank you very much, John. The Saskatchewan Party has focused on multiple aspects with addictions and mental health. Most recently, we've opened up 30 beds. We're going to be reopening 30 beds that were closed under the NDP in Estevan area to be able to deal specifically with crystal meth, because the detox process of this is a much different process than just a normal detox process. We also have invested in harm reduction. We have needle exchange, and we do have naloxone kits available. The safe injection site that was discussed by some of my colleagues here is something that we just did not fund in this year's budget. As Premier Moe has said, this isn't off the table. It's just something that we did not fund in this budget. But we do take this issue extremely seriously. I know personally, and I think this has impacted everybody in Saskatchewan on mental health and addictions. I know it's impacted my family personally with my sister, as well as other members of my family that are very close. So this it crosses all lines, it crosses all demographics, and we are working on this with our partners to be able to make sure that we help improve those people's lives.
Thank you very much. Bruno.
Thank you. I know I'm old. I know my wife is old too. But the situation is, what do you know as candidate what it is to be a drug addict? I'm not saying that you don't know, because some people of your family are. But it's just a question, why would somebody sell a drug? How many people that you know are selling drugs? I had some people I knew in France who were selling drugs. I had some people I knew who were injecting in bathrooms. Have you seen the wrong bathroom? Because when I found out that she was doing it, she was a friend, and we know. But the thing is, where all these things is coming from? When I talk about this kid that didn't know that he had a flag, when I had another kid, because I didn't blame him for something he didn't do, at the end of the class, take the dustpan and clean the class on his knees and hands. And because I used to drive buses, I know you have to look behind you and see if anybody behind that you left. And he was there, and I said, I will do it. Go home. And that is the issue. We forget about social issues. Thank you.
We'll go on to the next question. Mr. Bruno, you'll start this round. COVID-19 has challenged everyone, but many are saying it has impacted those who are disadvantaged the most. Is it true, or how can we help these people more?
It's not a difficult question. It is a true question where when the mom comes home, and I know for my mom, and you have to go to school, you come back from school, and she has to do the cooking, and she has to worry about if you cut anything at school, or if she is still in good health to go back to work in the morning after. Because some people refuse to wear masks because they said, you know what, this is my right to kill you. I say no. We have small businesses. We are at the present time in a dire situation. Why? Because they don't have the proper ventilation system in their cafe or restaurant or gym and so on. Nothing has ever been done, even though this particular government knew since March of this year. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Nelson.
COVID-19 has become a very serious issue in Saskatchewan. COVID-19 is a real thing. That's a fact. COVID-19 will continue to exist in Saskatchewan for this year, next year, and foreseeable years to come. That's a fact. We cannot stay shut down forever. We are going to have to learn to manage and live with COVID-19. We may get a vaccine, and it may work, it may be efficient, it may not. People may choose to take it, they may choose not. These are all facts. So we're going to have to learn that we need to protect the vulnerable. We need to protect those that can be harmed by it. The rest of us need to get on with our life.
Thank you. Mr. Merriman.
Thank you very much, John. I don't think anything has impacted this province, certainly not in my generation as much as COVID-19. Back in March, we were very much learning about what COVID-19, we were the first government to react to be able to shut down our schools. We shut down our economy in a very systematic approach, but didn't shut it down too much that it was impacting major impacts on our economy. We were also making sure that we kept key areas open to be able to serve the people. Under the leadership of Dr. Shahab, we've been able, and all of the public health officers, I want to be able to publicly thank them for what they have done for our province. They have given us a steady hand on the rudder to be able to make sure that everybody felt safe and everybody was informed. I myself was on weekly calls with several community-based organizations across the province and every shelter in the province to be able to make sure that their needs were being met while we were addressing the COVID-19 pandemic.
Thank you. Ms. Sauer.
Thank you for the question. I think it's quite obvious, not just in Saskatchewan, but across the country, that some of the people most impacted by COVID-19 are the more disadvantaged people in our communities, but also small business owners. But I would say those who work in the service sector, incredibly impacted by what's been going on. As well as what we're seeing more and more is that actually women are being impacted in a way more significantly than their male counterparts, which is why I'm proud that in our platform we're introducing, we want to introduce universal childcare to Saskatchewan at $25 a day. This is a really important piece of getting people back to work and getting them back to work safely. The other one I'm very proud that we want to put forward is increasing minimum wage to $15 an hour. The Sask Party government during this pandemic sought to increase minimum wage by only 13 cents an hour. 13 cents can't even buy you a Timbit, and it's not helping people during this crisis.
Thank you very much. Ms. Hunter.
COVID-19 absolutely does affect those at the lowest economic bracket, and in more ways than simply not enough access to the supplies needed to deal with COVID-19, but also in that many of the needed extra supports, because of the inadequate funding that people are receiving through the current social safety net, have access to. It's actually intended in the current system that people will need to access things like the food bank, silk, just all the many services that are available in society to give people that little bit extra. And right now, many of those options are closed. They're simply unavailable due to the pandemic. And so instead of upping the amount that people receive, we still see a situation where those on said benefits are receiving $40 a day or less. $40 a day is actually in the upper end. And I'm proposing that we would bring in a guaranteed livable income. Everyone would receive what we as Canadians decided was the bare minimum for living, $2,000 a month, bringing all social services recipients up to that level that the CERB was. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We'll go to the next question. Ms. Sauer, we'll ask you to start off. Why are treaty rights important to all people in this province?
Well, treaty rights are important because we are all treaty people, and we have to recognize the original peoples of this land. Frankly, I think it's important for all of us to remember that when we're all not able to achieve our best potential, we're all not able to achieve our best potential, if that makes any sense. Every single person has to be able to have the opportunity and the equality that's needed to be able to achieve the best in Saskatchewan. And when that's not happening, we're all failing as a society. And that's happening right now in this province with the inequality we see in our communities. It's very, very important that we recognize the treaty rights, that we continue to live by them, and we do everything we can to work toward reconciliation for this province.
Thank you very much. Ms. Hunter.
We absolutely need to respect and validate treaty rights and make sure that we move forward on this issue. We see a situation where the inequality between people living on Indigenous land and those not is glaring to anyone who takes 2 minutes to take a look at this situation. The Saskatchewan government needs to move forward. The Saskatchewan Green Party is running a slate of 25% Indigenous candidates. And I think that seeing representation in our legislature is another really important way that we can make sure that these issues are addressed. We need to have Indigenous voices in the Ledge in a greater number, and so that Indigenous people are actually who are bringing legislation forward. We need to make sure that instead of consulting and then deciding what happens, that we actually listen as Indigenous people, bring forward needs, and then that's what's implemented. Thank you.
Thank you. Bruno.
Thank you. When I mentioned this particular child in grade 3 asking or saying, you know what, I don't have a flag, meaning I don't have an identity. It is sad that in the 21st century, the Saskatchewan Party and the NDP have never done anything for the last 40 years. And just because now they realize more people are educated, this particular kid may have a chance not to finish in jail, may have a chance not to finish as a drug dealer, may have a chance not to be an abusive husband. It's just the fact that we have to recognize the identity, the past, the present, and the future of Indigenous treaty men and women and children in this province of Saskatchewan once and for all. That's the reason why I proposed in the process that we have flags on the Saskatchewan building identifying that, yes, we recognize this particular situation.
Thank you. Mr. Merriman.
Thanks, John. And it's not often I agree with my colleague from the New Democrat, but we are all treaty people. And I think that that's important that everybody understands that and takes that statement to heart and incorporates that. I myself, since being elected and prior to being elected, have worked very hard with the Indigenous community, the First Nation community. I've participated in sweats, pipe and feast ceremonies across the province, as well as smudges, to understand the cultural side of, as a non-Indigenous person, I felt it was important that I incorporated that into how I worked with the Indigenous community and also who I consult. We've had a very good working relationship with various First Nations and Métis groups across the province, especially with Saskatoon Tribal Council, where we were able to work forward on a partnership agreement and a first contact protocol to be able to make sure that the children within their communities were looked after by Indigenous organizations. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Nelson.
So what we have in Saskatchewan are 74 separate First Nations and a half a dozen or so treaties. And in fact, we are all treaty people. We are subject to one treaty or the other. All of those treaties state that First Nations have the right to govern themselves in the way that they see fit. And what we've seen is a group of well-hearted, well-minded, well-intentioned government people up here, and they all refer to us as we and Indigenous people as they. And this is the problem, and Indigenous people would be the first to point that out. So until we find a place in government for Indigenous people who govern themselves, not in the legislature, but govern themselves, we are going to continue to have this dichotomy. So unless we're going to recognize Aboriginal self-governance in this province, we are always going to have these tensions. And it's really sad because we have the agreements written right there on 6 treaties. All we have to do is honor them. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I feel like I should have the Rocky music playing right now because we're out to the candidate questions. So here's how this works again. 20 seconds to ask your question, 45 seconds to respond, although it's hard to get the question out in 20 seconds. So we're going to start with you, Ms. Sauer.
Oh, okay. I have a question for Mr. Merriman. I don't think he'll be surprised. Mr. Merriman, as we talked about already, Mr. Vermette, my colleague, put forward a legislation, the Suicide Prevention Strategy Bill, which every Sask Party MLA, including yourself, voted against it. Bearing in mind that experts have called the Sask Party's Pillars of Life document vague to the point of being meaningless, could you please explain why yourself and all of your Sask Party colleagues voted against a bill that would have likely saved lives?
Thanks very much for the question. I'm very proud of our Pillars of Life that we did, and we were done in consultation over the last year with various groups. We've recently been receiving support from the Canadian Mental Health Association, so I disagree with the condemnation of exactly what this plan is. But we've also had the FSIN recently sign a letter of agreement to work with the provincial government and with the federal government to build on the Pillars of Life. This is a starting document. It's a fluid document that will continue to grow and evolve over the years. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Bruno.
Thank you. My question may be towards the NDP. You have among the people or the candidates who are running somebody who belongs to social services. And it so happened that my question is directed to this particular effect. Why do we still have so many Indigenous men, women in jail? Since decades, and nothing has ever been done for them to be educated, to be moved out of the system, or put into a situation where they are with battered women, because obviously they are...
I've given you double the time, so
oh,
I think we'll
yes,
get to
my
the
apologies.
question.
Go ahead.
That's a very good question, and one I wish you would have asked my Sask Party colleague, as they've been in government for over a decade now. But I do know that it is a real shame that, in particular in the justice side, that the Sask Party have cut programs that the NDP were actually working really hard to have well established while they were in power, including, like I said, the Alternative Measures Program, which specifically seeks to ensure that people can be redirected out of the justice and incarceration system, as well as the Aboriginal Court Worker Program, which helps particularly Indigenous people navigate what is a very difficult and complex system. We have a huge problem of overrepresentation in our jails. As a corrections critic, I've visited the jails several times, and you can see how disproportionate there are of Indigenous people in our prison system, and it's a real shame that the Sask Party have done very little to address the calls to action and seek to deal with this issue.
Thank you. Ms. Hunter.
Again, not surprisingly, my question is for Mr. Merriman. While claiming that your Pillars per Life program is excellent and doing all the things it's supposed to do, suicides have continued unabated. My question would be, instead of continuing to defend your faulty program, why don't you do what real leaders do and admit when you're wrong?
Thanks for the question. This is a brand new plan that we've just had endorsed by the Canadian Mental Health Association, and also, as I mentioned, with the FSIN that have supported a letter of commitment to work with us. The Pillars for Life, again, is a fluid document. This is a document that is going to be built on over the years and over the years. This was a starting point. We all agree in this room that suicide is a huge issue within our province. It's impacting families across the northern communities as well as the southern, rural, urban. But we want to make sure that the Pillars of Life is a good starting point to be able to build on it over the years, to be able to make sure that we're helping out anybody that is impacted by mental health and having any suicidal issues.
Thank you. Mr. Merriman, it's your turn.
Thanks very much. I will ask my NDP colleague a question. I don't get to ask them questions too often. Your party is committed to over $2.7 billion in your platform. There was another $4 billion that was uncosted. Recently up in Saskatoon in the last week, your candidate committed to another $100 million for the SED program. Without raising taxes to anybody, how are you going to pay for this?
First of all, I take issue with some of the numbers that you're throwing out there, Mr. Merriman. They're not all entirely accurate. In a time of a pandemic, it's not necessarily the right time to be talking about austerity budgets like your government has been discussing, Mr. Merriman. We saw what happened in 2017 and the cuts, the very, very devastating cuts that happened to very important programs that a lot of people relied on and had to come to the legislature to fight your government to make sure that they were reinstated. We're very concerned about what the budget is going to look like should you form government and the Sask Party form government after this election, considering what that 2017 budget looked like.
Thank you. Mr. Nelson.
Sure. In keeping with tradition, I'll make my question for Mr. Merriman. In April of 2019, there was a controversy where you did not invite the FSIN and the AFN to a meeting with the federal minister, Seamus O'Regan. Many of us believe that that's because Mr. O'Regan didn't want to meet with the FSIN and the AFN. So I guess my question is a simple yes or no question. Are you one of the Sask Party members that holds a federal Liberal membership?
I was not expecting that question. No, I have never held a federal Liberal membership, and nor do I ever plan on having a federal Liberal membership. When I had the honor of hosting all the social services ministers across our country be able to come into Saskatoon and talk directly about Indigenous issues, and specifically on C-92. The first person that I called on that was Tribal Chief Mark Arcan to make sure that he was okay with us welcoming them to Treaty 6 territory. And on that day, he was able to present all of the ministers and all of their aides with Treaty 6 medals. So I'm very proud of how we were able to work with the government, not just the federal government, but government to government to government. The First Nation government, the provincial government, and the federal government all working together.
How many do carry federal memberships?
Thanks very much. We're going to go to the next series of questions here, and we're going to start with you, Ms. Hunter. And the question is, racism is a problem that needs to be addressed. How can we address this?
Racism is unfortunately alive and well in Saskatchewan. And in fact, historically, the Ku Klux Klan had strong ties throughout Saskatchewan and in fact was where it first came to in Canada. This is something that we need to address as part of our history, and the fact that these kinds of thoughts and actions are something that's still alive in our society right now. We need to enact legislation that protects people of color and also make sure that there is no discrimination in the workplace or in our society against people's culture, religion, and anything else that has to do with race. Right now, as well, Indigenous and people of color are disproportionately represented in our jails and in children in care in this province. And so this is, of course, questions of race and people making judgment calls on how people are raising their children. And we need to make sure there's more supports available.
Thank you. Mr. Merriman.
I think the first step in addressing racism is certainly within your own family, to make sure that you're teaching the next generation to be better than the generation that is now and the generation before that. I grew up in Toronto, Ontario with a very multicultural group of friends that I still keep in contact. There was Greek gentlemen, Filipinos, African Americans. I mean, there was everybody there, and we all treated each other with respect. As far as our Indigenous and Métis, I think it's understanding, and that's why I've immersed myself in understanding what is going on, and I encourage everybody to be able to understand what is some of the concerns that are being brought forward on the race side of things within Saskatchewan, and have an open mind in trying to look at how we can do things better within our communities.
Thank you. Mr. Nelson.
Sure. If we're going to deal with racism, it starts with leadership. True leadership is, in fact, to lift people up. And in this province, that's an easy opportunity. And we see it talked about in very general terms and never a specific term. So in order to deal with it, I think I have to agree with Mr. Merriman. It starts at home. It starts with each individual family. Family is the building block of society. And if we don't deal with it at that level, then it will never be dealt with. But at the same time, with leadership, as long as the government calls themselves we and calls First Nations they, racism will exist. It's that simple. They're getting failed by the government over and over and over again. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Sauer.
Absolutely, we still have racism in our society. I think the first step is having leaders who are willing to actually admit that and address it head on. I think we have had too many leaders in our province who have wanted to skirt around the issue because they feel like it is too controversial for whatever reason to talk about. We are, like I said, as an NDP government, fully committed to working with Indigenous peoples on the Truth and Reconciliation calls to action, and having those be measurable and actionable, and having us as a government be held to account for those measurable actions.
Thank you very much. Bruno.
Thank you. It is interesting, and maybe because I'm that old, but racism, I lived it when I was a kid, because I lived in sponsored rent high-rise complex in France. And you had many families coming from many different way of life, and also from different countries. We knew we were different, but it so happened that we talked to each other. I experienced the fact that at one point in my life, I had a bad car accident. And I was with some of my classmates going to Paris to the theater. So you had people in wheelchair, people polio, I mean, you name it, you have it. Some kids with pockets of their urine on the side of their wheelchair. But the point is, we met somebody who said, you know what, to the monitor who was with us, why don't you keep these people away from us? And that's the main issue with racism. We look at the other one and say, you know what, I'm better than you, keep away from us. And that's the problem.
Thank you very much. We'll go on to the next question. Mr. Nelson, we'll start with you. Homelessness is a challenge. What can or should be done?
Homelessness is a very serious challenge, especially here in Saskatchewan. Of course, in Saskatchewan, we enjoy winter. Of course, if you're homeless, that's not just unenjoyable, it's dangerous. Our shelters are overflowing. Some of them are shut down due to COVID-19, and there are very few places for that pressure to release. We have many people trying to couch surf from friend to friend and family member to family member. We have young people in this province committing crimes so that they can be put into incarceration for the cold weather season. This is a lack of commitment. It's a lack of commitment on the government's part. It's a lack of commitment on society's part. But certainly I see many charities and many people within society doing their best to alleviate the problem. So again, this is one of those government issues where they like to talk a lot about it, but we don't see those actions. You know, they're just one of those things that we didn't fund in this budget. You know, maybe in a future budget, let us think about it some more. Seems to be a common answer from the Sask Party, and so the Buffalo Party would like to be an opposition party, so we can hold them to account on these types of issues.
Ms. Sauer.
We have a growing homeless problem, a problem of homelessness in Saskatchewan right now. And it affects everything, really. If you are someone who doesn't know where they're going to sleep that night, then they can't address any of the other issues, and they can't seek any sort of economic opportunity. They can't address any issues that they may be having, be it mental health or addictions. That's why the Housing First program is so incredibly important. We're committed as an NDP government to investing $5 million to create a poverty reduction strategy and increase support for Housing First, something that has gone largely ignored, potentially annoyed, I'm not sure, but ignored by the Sask Party government. It's a very important piece, and it has been successful in other jurisdictions.
Thank you. Ms. Hunter.
I've been told that the Saskatchewan Green Party 2020 election platform is airy-fairy and unrealistic. We want to end poverty, end homelessness. And these are goals that are achievable. Other major communities have done so. We just need to decide to act. It's completely possible to have a Housing First policy, and needs to happen in this province. We have some of the coldest temperatures on earth, and yet we have huge numbers of homeless individuals in our province. Canada, in September 25th of 2009, agreed, and Saskatchewan agreed, to the UN Sustainability Goals. Amongst those are the right to water, the right to a life, the right to a place to sleep, and food to eat. As of September 25th of 2019, last year, we had not moved along on those goals. These are goals we agreed with the UN that we were going to do. It's absolutely vital that we live up to our responsibilities and what we have agreed to. We need to end homelessness now.
Thank you. Bruno.
Thank you. You know, you think about homelessness and you think about COVID-19. I used to work at the bank. And if you don't have an address, you can't get a bank account. You can't get a credit card. You can't get a driver's license. You can't get anything. It's putting people in, and it's unfortunate because the word I was going to use, I wouldn't be able to pronounce it in English. But anyway, you lose all identity. Now with COVID-19, and you can see shelters doing their best to put coats everywhere. Unfortunately, if somebody coughs during the night or coughs they can't do anything about it. So which means you're going to have this situation where everybody is going to have COVID-19. We are dehumanizing, I found it, dehumanizing people, and that is sad.
Thank you. Mr. Merriman.
Thanks, John. First of all, to correct the record, none of the shelters were overflowing during COVID. Actually, they saw a reduction. That's why I was on the call with the shelters across the province. Every shelter that was in the province was on a weekly call with me during COVID. Second part is we have Sask housing units that are owned by you, the taxpayer. There's 3,000 of them across the province. Now, sometimes just moving somebody into a home or into an apartment isn't enough. We have to work with the community-based organizations to be able to provide those wraparound services that those individuals might need to make sure that they're safe, that they're getting to their appointments on time, that they're able to get a healthy diet, to be able to meet their specific needs. So we need those wraparound services to be able to help those individuals. And I'm glad to see that the NDP is going to help out with a poverty reduction strategy. I find it extremely ironic because the leader of their party helped pen our poverty reduction strategy a few years ago, and you can find that as Dr. Ryan Miley was one of the contributors to the Saskatchewan Party's poverty reduction strategy. So I'm very glad to hear that they're going to revisit this and come up with their own poverty reduction strategy.
Thank you very much. We'll go on to the next question. Mr. Merriman, you will start. What is your position on a guaranteed income?
I think that a guaranteed income that the federal government brought out for the pandemic was something that was important to be able to stabilize people that were working. I don't think a guaranteed income can go forward. I don't think it's sustainable financially. If you were looking at everybody getting a specific around $2,000 seems to be the number that the federal government chose. I don't know where that financial pressure would be relieved. That would be a huge financial pressure for the provincial government. If that was put on, it would be in excess of $3 billion, and it would basically triple what we were doing in social assistance right now. I don't think it's financially stable. We do have programs keyed for people with disabilities, for people that are temporarily on social assistance, and those people that need housing. I think that we need to make sure that we keep focused on those and not just do a blanket guaranteed income.
Thank you. Ms. Hunter.
Saskatchewan Greens are proposing a guaranteed livable income. The time is now. We have been calling for this for a very long time as Greens across the country. The COVID-19 pandemic did, yes, indeed, bring about the CERB. I wouldn't call it a guaranteed income, though. I don't know where you're getting that. It was requested that Justin Trudeau bring in a guaranteed livable income. Instead, he brought in the CERB, which I call his leaky boat. I actually felt sorry for the guy. He had to stand up every day and apologize for all the people he left out. A guaranteed livable income would make sure that everyone received that $2,000 per month. Look after people with dignity. And when we talk about where that money comes from, I don't know, does the word Vinci mean anything to you? Maybe instead of paying out money to friends in big business and going way over budget on a bypass. My dad was in curb and gutter his whole life. And that bypass was supposed to come in at $200 to $400 million, and instead it went up to $2 billion. I can see some places we could come up with cash for social programs.
Thank you. Ms. Sarr?
It's a really interesting discussion that's happening right now. I think that any sort of guaranteed minimum income would need to be led by the federal government. We're very committed on taking the first step, which is increasing the minimum wage in this province. Saskatchewan has the lowest minimum wage amongst provinces in Canada right now. And the Sask Party government during the pandemic sought to increase that wage by only 13 cents per hour. We have a situation where families can work full-time in Saskatchewan, but still need to go to the food bank because they can't afford their rent and their food on the minimum wage that they're being provided for in this province, which is why I'm so proud that an NDP government would increase minimum wage to $15 an hour.
Thank you. Bruno.
Thank you. I put a lot of thought into this particular situation of the minimum wage, and but I'm thinking about I'm retired. I have a pension which is $1,400 a year given to me by the federal government, which is approximately $8.25 an hour working. I paid my taxes in the past in Saskatchewan. I buy in Saskatchewan, and what I get from Saskatchewan as a senior is basically zero. All the money comes to me from the federal government. If we were to put this particular $15 in action, or even these days, $11.63 that we should have as a minimum wage, that will give me $400 more if the Saskatchewan Party had the dignity to give me this money as a senior. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Nelson.
I will go on the record and I will say I don't believe that the people of Saskatchewan want a handout. I think that in fact the people of Saskatchewan want a hand up. When the economy was shut down artificially by the government, absolutely they took on the responsibility to replace that income for people. But a guaranteed livable income is a concept that is based in economics that are not congruent with the ones we're currently living. It would literally be a revolutionary change in our society. What we have to do is look at making life more affordable. The Sask Party talks about that all the time, yet they don't do something as simple as raising the minimum amount of income before taxation. The Buffalo Party would bring in a flat income tax, and it wouldn't start until a number that would guarantee that people could have a minimum livable income that they earned, that is theirs, that they are proud of, that helped them self-actualize, that made them feel accomplished. That's what people want, a hand up, not a handout.
Thank you. We'll go to the next question. Ms. Sarr, you'll be the first to answer the question. Mental health is a major issue. What is the best way to address the provision of mental health services for people within the province?
We have a growing mental health crisis in this province. Like I said in the question earlier, when you speak to families, I was on the doorstep the other day and I spoke to a mom who took her 16-year-old daughter to the ER here in Regina because she was suicidal. That was the 5th time she had taken her daughter to the ER in the last year and a half. She had to wait 14 hours to be able to see a psychiatrist, at which point the psychiatrist told her that she wasn't an immediate threat to herself, gave her a prescription and sent her home. This mom is at her wit's end. She doesn't know what to do. There are hardly any safe beds for those who are seeking treatment for mental health issues in this province. We're committed to dedicated mental health ERs in Regina, Saskatoon, PA, and Moose Jaw, so people who are in crisis, who are going to the ER, get the treatment that they need, as well as other things. Unfortunately, I'm out of time.
Thank you. Bruno?
It's a key issue, and the key issue comes from the fact that people who are under stress, and that's basically all of us at one point in time, have a breakdown. If you're suicidal, then you do have the option to go to the hospital, unless obviously you're black. And you go there and you ask the question, and they put you away, send you away, and what you do, you drown yourself in the lake. And that's the situation we're talking about. We don't speak the language of the people who have these particular mental issues. We don't speak this language which pushes them to commit suicide or to harm themselves or somebody else. And that's the main key that we do have to deal with in this particular type of government. I'm not saying that the Sask Party did the best job, or the NDP did the best job, or the Green is going to do the best job, and or if the Buffalo Party is going to be the best job. But we have to recognize that not everybody speaks English, is fluent, and live in accommodations which are fantastic. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Merriman.
Thanks, John. I think the first step in dealing with any mental health issue is talking about it. Talking about if you see somebody that is experiencing some trauma, whether that be friends, family, or coworkers, to be able to help them to try to seek some type of support. Now that support might come in other friends or families, or it might come in professional support. We have various conduits into mental health and addiction services, whether that's through the emergency room, whether that's through your general practitioner, to be able to refer you to a psychiatrist. There's also phone-in lines. There's the farm stress line, which I just heard driving down today, that welcomes anybody that has any issues. It doesn't have to be agriculture related. But I think the first step is talking to your family members and your coworkers and your friends that if you recognize something, we have an obligation to be able to reach out as friends, family, and coworkers to be able to help them and just say you're not alone and somebody does care about you, and we want to be able to help you get the help that you are able to access within our province. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Nelson?
To speak specifically to mental health, I think that we should probably be a little bit more specific. We have mental disorders and we have stress-related mental health. Certainly the latter is the one that we're having a crisis in. Mental disorders are always present in society, and we have programs and spaces and beds available in this province. However, what we're seeing is an uptick in stress-related mental health issues, and to deal with those, creating more beds is not the way to fix it. To deal with those, you have to look at the root causes, the reasons these things are happening. So if we want to continue to create a mental health crisis, we should continue to shut down our economy. We should continue to restrict our local business. We should continue to watch them close and go into insolvency and not open up and get the economy going again. As leadership, it's our responsibility to create the conditions with which citizens can succeed. Happy, successful citizens don't suffer stress. That's the difference. Root cause, always easier to fix. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Hunter?
I know it sounds a bit sometimes like a broken record to go back to what we talked about earlier, but having anti-suicide legislation with set target limits and agreed upon services that we're going to put in place and timelines for that is absolutely key. Saskatchewan should be embarrassed, and those in government should be embarrassed, that all of the Sask Party members voted against the anti-suicide legislation that was put forward. This needs to happen in Saskatchewan now. We need to admit that that's what we need. Furthermore, a guaranteed livable income is something that in countries that have instituted it in Europe, reports that people who have this to fall back on actually have higher mental health outcomes. So just thought I'd throw that one in there as well. As well, the Saskatchewan Green Party proposes expanding our universal Medicare system to more like what was originally intended. Saskatchewan, of course, is so proud of being the birthplace of universal Medicare, but it was originally intended to cover dental care, mental health care, pharmacare, and have everything covered under one big umbrella. We propose bringing that in, and that will bring greater mental health outcomes.
Thank you very much. We'll go to the last question before closing comments. We'll start with you, Bruno. What could or should be done to further economic growth for Indigenous communities?
You know, when I spoke at the beginning about this particular 7th flag on the legislative building, this is for real. You have to give a voice and you have to recognize the fact that we have treaty nations that we have to respect on an equal level. And to help with this particular crisis, then we have to develop, I don't have to develop because I'm not speaking for First Nations. We have to have the First Nation and the Métis Nation develop the program that they want to see. I used to say to my students, tell me what you want to say and I'm going to help you say it. This is exactly what I'm proposing under the name of the Liberal Party of Saskatchewan. Tell us what you want to say and we're going to help you to say it and to deliver it. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Mr. Nelson.
Sure. As part of the non-First Nations community, I could go ahead and say that what my ideas are for developing business in the Indigenous community are actually probably completely irrelevant to them. What I would also point out is that it's non-First Nations businesses that are going out of business right now, and it's downtown and Main Street small town that's going out of business right now, not First Nations businesses. In fact, there's a lot of energy in the First Nations community. I'm watching urban reserves develop all over the province. I'm watching new businesses be built. They're doing great. I think maybe we could take a lesson from them. But if we really wanted them to do better at business, we would simply get out of their way. They have the right to govern themselves. Get out of their way and let them be successful. Maybe we'd learn a thing or two. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Hunter?
I think you already asked me this question.
That was the first one.
No.
Okay, sorry, can you repeat the question?
Okay, sure. What could or should be done to further economic growth for Indigenous communities?
We need to put forward the findings of the Truth and Reconciliation and MMIW and Jordan's Principle. We actually need to act on everything that's already been proposed. We certainly have all the tools available, and we've been given all the advice as to what needs to happen, and we just need to act on what's already laid out in front of us. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Merriman.
Thanks very much, John. And in my opening comments, and I just want to make a clarification, we do engage First Nations and Indigenous organizations as to what they want to be able to help out with their economic stimulus, whether it's on reserve or off reserve. We look at what the federal government is doing as well as what we can do as a provincial and what local communities. But as I mentioned, we had $213 million in targeted investment to meet the priorities of Indigenous communities and businesses and organizations. Another $27 million to Indigenous skills and trades and training. This would be through SIIT and other organizations, Gabriel Demont. And another $5.2 million for essential skills program aimed at on reserve. This is what the Indigenous communities are asking of the provincial government, and this is what we are working with them to provide now and in the future.
Thank you. Ms. Sauer.
Thank you, and thank you for the question. Opportunity begins at school, and we would work with First Nations in Saskatchewan to ensure that First Nations schools receive equal funding, something that is not existing right now. We would work with the federal government and First Nations and Métis governments to close the gap in health, employment, justice, and education between Indigenous and non-Indigenous people. And something we're hearing from Indigenous communities that government could be addressing right now in terms of opportunity is working on the supply chain in terms of contracts. Government and Crowns could be doing a lot more to ensure that contracts are being awarded to local and in particular First Nations companies.
Thank you so much. We'll go to closing comments now. We'll start with you, Mr. Merriman.
Thank you very much, John. First of all, I want to thank everybody for participating, and Naomi, Nicole, Richard, and Bruno. It's not easy putting your name forward on the election and going out and talking to people and knocking on the doors and never knowing what's on the other side of that door. So I want to thank you all for putting your name forward to represent your areas. The main question here in the election is, who do you trust? Who do you trust to lead our economic recovery? We felt that people needed to see a plan that will lead us into a strong recovery. The Saskatchewan Party has that plan, a plan of a strong Saskatchewan. In this plan, we will lower your power bills for 1 year, help you with your home renovations, reduce taxes for small businesses, build hospitals and schools, highways, and other important infrastructure projects while making life more affordable for you. This plan will drive Saskatchewan's economic recovery and create jobs, and we will see the provincial budget balanced by 2024. We have already seen signs of a strong recovery. Today, Saskatchewan has the lowest unemployment rate in Canada. That means more people are working and being able to help with our recovery. Our plan will continue to drive that recovery. The NDP have a plan to make a plan. Quite frankly, that's not a plan at all. We can't go back to the days when the NDP were in government, when people were left Saskatchewan, when hospitals and schools were closed regularly. We can never go back to those days. On October 26th, vote for strong communities, strong family, and a strong Saskatchewan. Please vote for the Saskatchewan Party. Thank you.
Thank you. Bruno.
Thank you. I was checking my heart rate, and it's going over the limit. The Saskatchewan Liberal Party has a plan. The plan is to make sure that whatever these two organizations, because basically they will be going back into Parliament, are monitored, and we can make a definite plan to make them responsible and accountable for what they're doing. As I said yesterday, we are only 3 people. We are mighty people. We have 1 person in Saskatoon and 2 people in Regina. Saskatoon couldn't make it because obviously as obligation, the person in Regina is a family person and couldn't make it either. And I will be there tomorrow again. But what counts is your voice. We want to be your voice which has always been ignored or most of the time. Your voice towards, I was going to say racism, but it's more towards injustice. Injustice that people allow to develop within our society, and usually which has not addressed by this particular government in place. Injustice which doesn't see the flags of the First Nations, the 7 First Nations, on this particular legislative building, even though this government over time, not you specifically, but every government in Saskatchewan over time, said from many people's strengths. What people are we talking about? White people? Thank you.
Thank you, Bruno. Are you okay? Just wanted to check in.
No,
You're
I'm
okay?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, no, that's what you should do.
Ms. Sauer.
Thank you again for the opportunity to be here, and thank you for all of the candidates for the important discussion that I think we had this evening. I hope I've given you a sense today of the priorities of Saskatchewan New Democrats. I'm so proud to be part of this team and our plan to reduce poverty and commit to meaningful reconciliation with Indigenous people, including our commitments that we've discussed, like working with federal government and First Nations and Métis governments to close the gap in health, employment, justice, and education between Indigenous and non-Indigenous people, invest $10 million to act on the calls to action of the Truth and Reconciliation Commission, reform our child welfare system, working with the FSIN and First Nations to increase control and autonomy over child intervention on reserves, investing $5 million to create a poverty reduction strategy, and increase support for Housing First. Thank you again for this opportunity to speak today and address some of the important questions facing the future of our province. And to all of you watching this forum, I hope that you and your loved ones remain safe and healthy in the weeks and months ahead as we all continue to face this difficult and challenging time together. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Hunter.
Hello, and I would like to as well extend thanks to my colleagues who've shown up tonight and shown up for the people of Saskatchewan. The Saskatchewan Green Party has proposed a platform based on kindness and love, caring for everybody in our society. It's very frustrating to me when the first thing that I hear from the government in power is, how will you pay for that? How will you not pay for making sure that everybody in our society is looked after? What ends up happening when we allow suicide epidemics, when we allow an opioid crisis, when we allow homelessness to reach a point where people are seeking help at the last possible emergency resource, hospitals, emergency rooms, we see that people are falling through the cracks. People are literally dying from neglect. On October 26th, vote for someone you can believe in. Vote for a kind and caring transition. As we deal with these crises, what is looming above these crises, the COVID-19 pandemic, is the climate crisis itself. We have very little time left to hold our planet to 1.5 degrees. We need people in government who are going to make that a top priority, because all of the issues that we talked about tonight are tied into the climate crisis itself. The Manhattan Climate Clock, which had been quoted at 15 years for quite a while, is right now at 7 years. Okay, we don't have another 2 election cycles to wait and hope that business as usual is good enough. For the sake of all of our children, we need to not be cowards. We need to not leave this for the kids to deal with. We need a plan to transition to clean energy within 10 years. We don't have more time than that. We don't have till 2035. We don't have till 2050. We need to solve this crisis now. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Mr. Nelson.
All right. Thank you, John and Paul and Bruno and Nicole and Naomi. We started this evening talking about some very important topics: social services, child welfare, Indigenous issues. In fact, we know how to solve these issues. Right now, due to COVID-19 and many other issues, we have an opportunity deficit. We need to address that in order to have long-lasting success. And what we're doing is we're looking for a fundamental change in how government deals with things like child welfare. Waiting for a child to be in danger and then apprehending them is chasing our tail. We really need to get in front of these issues. We need to predict, plan, and support and offer resources to families before they get in that situation. Again, healthy families, healthy province, healthy kids. On October 26th, we believe the Buffalo Party would be the best choice to be in opposition in Regina. We think that we could hold the Sask Party to a level of accountability that they've never been held to before. We're humbly asking you to trust us, vote for Buffalo Party candidates, send us to Regina. We will fight for you. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank all of you for being here tonight, and I want to thank each and every one of you for being part of the democratic process. It's so very, very important to all of us here in this country, and so thank you so much for all that you do. And thank you for watching. We really appreciate it and hope you've gleaned some information from this debate. We have another one tomorrow at 6 p.m. that'll talk about the finances of the province, and we look forward to that debate. So I want to close by thanking the Association of Saskatchewan Realtors, the Regina and Region Home Builders, the Access Communications for all you do across the province, which is fantastic, Regina Downtown, Regina's Warehouse District, and the Regina and District Chamber of Commerce. Now, the most important thing, the absolute most important thing in all of this is that you get out and vote. And now some people think, well, my vote doesn't matter. I guarantee you, your vote matters. It matters a great deal. It's one of the most important things that you can do. So please get out and vote. Thanks for watching. Have a great evening.
Live debate coverage is brought to you by the Regina and District Chamber of Commerce, the Saskatchewan Realtors Association, the Regina and Region Home Builders Association, Regina Downtown, and the Regina Warehouse District.
Winter doesn't feel quite so long with Access Rural Internet. With unlimited data comes unlimited streaming and browsing, so you can warm up with your fill of Netflix originals or catch up with friends and family on social media. Plus, with Access's low prices and zero installation fees, you can put your money towards what really matters, like upgrading to that new sled. Browse more for less with Access Rural Internet. Visit myaccess.ca for more information.